Chapter 21, Chapter 20, Nostalgia. 2 weeks have passed since Jason first visited AI in the hospital. Slowly, he was gaining a better understanding of AI, her motivations, her personality, her values. He compiled all of them onto his mental profile of her. But it wasn't just AI. He had created mental profiles on everyone else. The kids in particular interested him the most because of their sometimes strange behavior and actions. Aqua was a normally quiet kid and was incredibly intelligent for his age. He usually only speaks when spoken to, yet the wisdom in his words and the maturity he would sometimes display would surprise him. Ruby was of a similar case. Most of the time, she would act like a normal toddler who adores her mother a bit too much, but he'd sometimes catch her saying things a kid shouldn't be able to say or understand. In both cases, Jason chalked it up to them just being strange kids, but he still held his suspicions just in case. It had been a refreshing 2 weeks because he finally had someone to talk to who wasn't a floating metal ball. However, he had not been idle between each visit. He had done his research on the Lalali theatrical company AI joined in the past, which was also where she supposedly met her ex. Based on his findings, the one who was most likely to be Aqua and Ruby's father is Hikaru Kamiki. He left the company 4 years ago and his location was currently unknown, but based on past photos he found, Hikaru was the perfect match. Blonde hair, average height, thin frame, and a great resemblance to Aqua and Ruby. In addition, Jason had moved into the condo next to AI's. Ruby was jumping in joy at that news and took quite a while to calm down. Miyako and Seto had been the one taking care of the kids at their place for the past 2 weeks and have been doing a great job. It helped that both Ruby and Aqua were very well behaved compared to other children. Jason had also visited Saki and her mother, making sure that she was doing well and fulfilling his promise of telling her more stories. He felt a great deal of pity for them because of the difficulties they were now facing. The bastard of a father was the main bread maker of the house, and now that he was in jail, Saki's mother was having a difficult time gaining money for their necessities. So, in order to help them, he had donated a substantial amount of money that would last them a few years, though it took a lot of persuasion for them to accept it. The money wasn't his, anyway. It was from all the drug operations he had cleaned up, and he still had a lot left, which he used to buy furniture for his new condo. But the most important business he finished was his identity. He traveled to every government office and police station in Tokyo, creating what seemed like authentic documents and hacking into their database networks while creating backdoors he could access whenever he wanted. Because of those actions, he now had access to a large amount of information at his beck and call. As the morning sun rose above the horizon, its golden rays pierced through the sky, casting a warm and gentle glow upon the world below. Jason sat completely still in the middle of his newly furnished living room while holding a meditative pose. His chest rose and fell in a pattern. He was dressed in a simple white shirt that hugged his figure, emphasizing his muscles, as well as gray sweatpants. His eyes slowly fluttered open as the sun's rays reached his face. The sun is up. I've been meditating for 12 hours, huh? For the past week, he had been meditating in order to sort the memories and knowledge that were his alternate selves, and from everyone else, Joe included in his enhancement. But the amount of knowledge he received from Bruce alone was enough to make his head spin. Bruce had in-depth knowledge of just about everything. Physics, quantum physics, chemistry, geography, magic. Every branch of science he thought would be useful in his crime fighting. That's not even including all the languages, skills, and forms of combat he learned. What he was most surprised by is the fact that Bruce even had a few magic spells in his repertoire. And people call Batman the one with no superpowers, he scoffed. Then again, I'm no slouch myself. Even without Bruce's knowledge, he still had Dick's, Nightwing, Tim's, Red Robin, Cassandra's, Orphan, Damian's, Robin, and Slade's, Deathstroke, knowledge inside his head. It took an entire week, but I'm finally done. The enhancement to my brain really helped sift through all that information, Jason thought as he groaned and stretched his limbs, standing up from his meditative pose. He looked at the watch on his wrist. AI is going to be leaving the hospital in a few hours. I should get some gifts for her. Wheatley, how is your exploration going? Oh, you're done meditating? I'm finding watching and listening to humans interact to be quite enjoyable. There was that one human who... Jason muted Wheatley's voice. He felt sorry, but Wheatley had a habit of going on never-ending talks and he got tired of it after the few times it happened. Shrugging his shoulders, Jason headed to the bathroom after taking out a red bath towel. Minutes later, he came out of the bathroom feeling refreshed and with a fresh set of clothes on him. He wore a black zip-up hoodie worn over a white t-shirt and paired with dark gray sweatpants. As he headed towards the kitchen in order to make himself a meal, the doorbell rang. They're here already, Jason muttered to himself. Jason silently made his way towards the door. He could sense 4 distinct heartbeats and smells. He opened the door with a smile. I didn't expect you all to come here this early in the morning. Seto greeted him with a sheepish face as he held the hand of an excited Ruby. Well, you know how Ruby is. She really wanted to come here and even woke up first among the 4 of us. He looked around discreetly, his eyes shifting in each direction, and loudly whispered to Jason with a grin. To be honest, this is surprising because Ruby usually sleeps like a log. I can hear you, you know. Ruby retorted and waved her hand with a bright grin. Good morning, Jason-san. Good morning to you too, Ruby. Aqua. Why don't you all come inside? I was just about to prepare breakfast, Jason said as he gestured for them to come inside. Ah, please excuse us, then. They all took off their shoes, entering the house with bated breaths and gasped when they saw the interior design. Jason's living room had a grey sofa along with a polished wooden table in front. Both were placed on top of a dark grey carpet. A huge wall-mounted TV was directly parallel from the sofa, complete with a high-end surround sound system and the latest gaming console below the TV. His large wooden dining table with 3 hanging lights above it could fit a family of 6, and his kitchen was completely stocked with new top-of-the-line kitchen utensils and a high-end coffee maker. Aside from all that, there were other ornaments and decorations, including some paintings on the walls. Jason wryly smiled. Even though it started with trying to look like I have a normal life, I think I got too into it. I spent around $15,000 buying all this. Miyako gasped in amazement. Incredible. Did you arrange all this furniture yourself, Jason-san? I did. Though it took a while to find the right ones. I think I went a bit overboard with the purchases. What do you all think? Jason said, nodding to her question. What do I think? Seta repeated, I think you have a talent for interior design. Thank you, but I just placed them in a way that looked nice. That's all. Jason said as he walked towards the kitchen. Jason-san, Ruby called as she tilted her head curiously. Do you know how to cook? I did say I was going to cook breakfast. You can turn on the TV and watch the news or watch a movie while I cook. Your choice. I'll watch you cook, said Ruby as she grabbed Aqua and pulled him with her. Come on, brother. Aqua followed along with an impassive face. You wanna watch? All right, said Jason, taking off his jacket as both Ruby and Aqua sat on the stools. Seto and Miyako both shrugged and turned on the TV, watching the morning news or anything else that interested them. Deathstroke had a surprising array of skills Jason didn't expect him to have. One of them was cooking at the level of a master chef. Thank you, Deathstroke. Let's put on a show, shall we? With the elegance and skill of a master chef, Jason began cooking a 5-star meal. Since Ruby and Aqua were watching, he even performed some tricks, such as cutting the ingredients so quickly that the knife turned into a blur. Within minutes, the tantalizing aroma of savory spices and sweet herbs filled the air, beckoning all 4 to the source of the delicious scent. As the sizzle of the pan mixed with the fragrant steam of a simmering sauce, the smell of good food grew stronger, its mouth-watering appeal irresistible to all who dared to catch a whiff. The fragrant bouquet of simmering meats and roasted vegetables intertwined, creating a symphony of smells that danced across the senses, promising a delicious feast for all who dared to partake. Wow, Aqua said as he and Ruby wiped the drool that escaped their mouths. I can't wait to eat whatever Jason-san is making. Seto and Miyako could smell the delicious aroma in the air as well, and they gulped in unison. I'm so glad I didn't eat anything before coming here. Around half an hour later, a meal composed of egg-fried rice, Japanese pork cutlet, and miso soup was set on the table where they all sat and put their hands together. Itadakimasu. As soon as everyone took their first bite, they all groaned in pleasure. They all only had one thought. Delicious. I have decided. Ruby put down her chopsticks and pointed at Jason, who raised an eyebrow as he chewed on a slice of pork. Be our papa. Everyone at the table immediately choked on their food, including Jason. They began patting their chest and drinking water. I did not expect that at all, Jason thought. Ruby, you can't just say that, Miyako said with a nervous smile as Aqua stared at his sister with deadpan eyes. You've barely known Jason-san for 2 weeks and he might already be in a relationship with someone else. Ruby crossed her arms and put her head down in thought before pointing at Jason again. Jason-san, are you in a relationship? No, not real. Then it's settled. You will be our papa, Ruby declared with utmost seriousness. Ow. Aqua put down the hand he used to bonk Ruby on the head before sighing and shaking his head. Don't just decide things for people without asking for their opinion. You haven't even asked AI what she thinks. Did Aqua just give me approval? Jason wondered. Ruby blinked. You're right. Let's finish this quickly so that Mama can say yes to Jason-san becoming papa. After finishing her sentence, Ruby began devouring her food and all of them could only shake their heads in exasperation. Jason smiled as he took another bite. Nostalgia began to fill his heart as he watched all of them enjoy the food. It feels like I'm back at the mansion with Alfred and Bruce, Chapter 22, Chapter 21, Letter from a Friend Inside the Hospital. While everyone walked, Ruby skipped towards AI's room while humming one of AI's songs. Ruby, slow down, Miyako called out while cupping her mouth. Ruby just kept going and replied jokingly, yes, Mama. I'll be careful. Miyako let out an exasperated sigh, her shoulders slumping in frustration. That girl just won't sit still. Give her some slack. She's only seen her mother once or twice these past 2 weeks, said Jason as he took a glance at Aqua calmly walking in hand with Miyako. While Aqua wasn't as expressive as Ruby in terms of facial expressions or tone of voice, his body language told a completely different story. We wanted to take them to visit AI more often, but we've been drowning in work and they have school during the weekdays. It doesn't help that the media went wild over the news of a stalker stabbing her, piling up more work on our plate, added Seto, as he checked his phone for any important messages from their associates and replying to them. When it was announced that AI Hoshino, the rising star of the entertainment industry, had been stabbed by a stalker, the news was on the lips of nearly every Japanese citizen. But spread out among the shock, horror, and sympathy from the public and her fans were also some cruel and insensitive comments and remarks. At X_69_XXX, should have just finished herself off. LOL. At Y_1000_YYY, that stalker guy realized that AI had a man. At K_GANE1 IQ, if so, it's hardly surprising she got stabbed. After the police caught the stalker, Jason expected the news of AI having twins to become the next big news and spread like wildfire, but the stalker surprisingly kept his mouth shut and only told them that someone had leaked AI's address to him. Jason didn't know if the stalker found the heart to not reveal AI's secrets, or if he just felt guilty and was paying for what he did in his own way. Aside from that, the stalker's confession of murdering someone was not included in the news, which meant the police were either still investigating the case, or they've already charged him for it and are keeping the news of the murder from the media. Jason's brows furrowed. Something is still bugging me, though. What are the motivations of their father, Hikaru? Why doesn't he just reveal the fact that AI has children? It would ruin her career, which is what I thought to be what he wanted, but I've changed my mind. Maybe he just wants AI to die. But why? His mind was filled with an endless amount of hypothesized deductions based on theoretical factors, but in the end, he couldn't reach a sure conclusion. I need to do some more investigation. Finding Hikaru would be ideal, but the bastard disappeared somehow, and as far as I know, the last time anyone saw him was on his university campus. Ruby took a right and her eyes almost immediately locked onto a masked figure sitting on one of the chairs. She shouted in excitement, "Ma!" Miyako, Seto, and Aqua's eyes slowly widened. Jason snapped out of his train of thought, stepping forward and covering Ruby's mouth before she could finish her sentence. The surrounding people curiously turned their heads in Jason's and Ruby's direction, wondering why the child suddenly shouted. Sorry about that. Jason smiled and bowed his head apologetically. Everyone's eyes now locked onto Jason's figure. In their mind, they didn't notice him at all until he spoke, but the moment they saw his face, they were mesmerized. The cheeks of every woman and teenage girl in the hall were dyed red as they stared at him, and even the guys in the hall did a triple take. She's just very excited. You'll behave now, won't you, Ruby? Ruby nodded, and only then did Jason remove his hand, bowing his head to the surrounding people again before moving on towards AI. From their position, they could AI sitting on a chair just outside her room. She had hidden her face beneath a face mask, sunglasses, and a cap, and wore a white dress shirt and jeans. Best, hey Jason-san, Ruby whispered to him as they walked to AI and he looked in her direction. She sent glances at the people around them before continuing with a playful smile. Maybe you should wear a mask, too. Everyone's whispering and staring at you. I don't blame them. I'd be doing the same if I saw a guy that somehow looked better than a supermodel. Nodding his head in agreement at her suggestion, Jason smiled wryly at her words. She spoke as if she was a teenager. I'll wear one later. Ignore them for now. Sensing something strange in the atmosphere, AI looked up from her phone and followed the direction everyone in the hall seemed to stare at. Jason waved at her with a friendly smile, and for a moment, she was hypnotized by it before she opened her arms just in time to catch her little bundle of joy. Mama. Ruby whispered happily in her mother's arms. I missed you so much. AI gently caressed Ruby. I missed you too, Ruby. Where's your brother and the others? Ruby slightly pulled back and pointed behind her. Right there. AI quickly spotted her son jogging towards her and opened her arms, embracing him along with Ruby. Giggling with joy, she said, I missed you too, Aqua. Have you two eaten well? Aqua nodded wordlessly, but with a smile on his face. Ruby quickly gasped, remembering this morning's breakfast. Mama, Mama. She slightly shook her mother. What is it, Ruby? AI asked as she patted Aqua's head. Jason-san can cook really well. He cooked breakfast earlier, and it tasted so good. That's when I started thinking and... AI tilted her head with a smile, curious. And... Ruby gave Jason a quick glance before cupping a hand to AI's ear and whispering, Can Jason-san be our papa? AI's expression froze, and her thoughts halted for a moment. Seeing the strange look on her mother's face, Ruby looked at AI with concern. Mama, are you okay? Miyako and Seto caught up with them and had puzzled looks on their faces. They began wondering why AI's expression was frozen before they looked at Ruby. When they remembered what had occurred earlier at Jason's condo, everything clicked. Just a short distance away from them, Jason held his face and sighed. Despite her whispering, he heard Ruby loud and clear. This girl. A short moment passed before AI's brain finished rebooting. She blinked and asked, why do you want Jason-san to be your papa? Ruby grew excited and began listing her reasons while raising a finger for each one. Because he cooks really well. He's kind. He's probably strong because he has big muscles. And, because he's our hero. Our hero, asked AI. Did Ruby know about his powers? Yeah. Ruby nodded enthusiastically. Jason-san saved Mama? That makes him our hero. AI nodded, finally understanding what Ruby meant. Well, alright, that's enough. Jason interrupted before they could get more distracted. Sorry about that, AI. I don't know what got into her all of a sudden. Oh, hello, Jason-san. AI flashed him her trademark smile, though he couldn't see it through the mask and the sunglasses. It's okay, I'm the one who should be apologizing. How are you feeling, AI? Seto asked with concern. I'm feeling better than ever. AI gave a thumbs up. They said I'm able to leave now, so let's go. AI stood up, holding her children's hands and paused when she noticed the height difference between her and Jason. She had to stretch her neck to even look at his face up close since the top of her head only reached the middle of his chest. Amazing. I couldn't tell the difference before because I was on the bed, but you really are tall, Jason-san, she exclaimed in amazement. Jason chuckled. You might not believe it, but I recently had a growth spurt. I was only 183 centimeters 6 feet tall before. Wait, really? How old are you again, Jason-san? Asked AI as they headed out of the hospital. I'm 21 years old. He sometimes forgot how young he still was. Wow, they all exclaimed. Well, are you ready to go home, AI? Seto asked with a smile. A surge of happiness welled inside him as he looked at AI and her children. He didn't know why, but ever since the stabbing, they had grown closer. Regardless, he was glad nothing worse happened to AI. In response to Seta's question, AI removed her sunglasses and lowered her mask, revealing her trademark smile. Of course. Laughter and cheerful voices echoed in Jason's condo. They had begun celebrating AI's return. Seto, Miyako, and Jason all drank the fancy alcohol, but AI refrained from drinking since she was still recovering. Ruby and Aqua happily sat beside their mother on the sofa while Jason prepared some snacks. As Jason put down a plate of food on the table, the doorbell rang. Huh. Are you expecting someone, Jason-san? Asked AI as she picked up and ate a piece of sushi. No, I'll go check who it is, said Jason as he walked towards the front door. However, he prepared himself for a confrontation. Ever since he got used to his enhanced senses, he had been using it all the time, and whoever was at the door was someone he couldn't sense at all. He neither smelled nor heard anything when he could even hear an alarm ring multiple blocks away. The person's presence was undetectable as well, and there should be no one able to hide their presence from him unless they had powers or they were someone like Joe. Jason calmly opened the door, but there was no one there. He checked both sides of the hallway and found no one. The only thing he found was mail on the ground. That thing is covered in so much dark energy, but for some reason, I can't sense its presence. He picked it up and opened it, extracting a letter from it. Dear Jason Todd, this will come as a surprise to you, but I know who you are and where you come from. If you're interested in learning more, meet me at XXXXXXXXXX tomorrow at 6 p.m. Don't be late. Your friend, Hikaru Kamiki CK. P.S. By the way, if you don't come, AI and our children will have very tragic ends. Jason crumpled the paper and crushed it in his hand before tossing it on the ground. Wheatley, extract the energy. Right. Wheatley emerged in stealth mode and began the extraction, tendrils of pitch black energy connecting him and the letter. Hikaru wants to play the villain. Jason clenched his fists. His fury raged inside him, wanting to be released. Chapter 23, Chapter 22, Deserved. The sun began its descent behind Tokyo's sprawling skyline, painting the city in warm hues of orange and pink. As the buildings grew dark, the sun set the sky ablaze with a kaleidoscope of colors. Jason, what are you going to do with this? Asked Wheatley as he hovered behind Jason on top of a rooftop, handing him a syringe filled with a clear orange liquid. Ever since Jason read that letter, he had been in a foul mood, so to speak. Clad in a sleek, red helmet with piercing, glowing eyes, Jason exuded a dangerous aura. His gray body armor, worn under a dark brown jacket with rolled-up sleeves, was made of a combination of materials able to protect him from most forms of damage, including gunshots and cuts. His pants were adorned with various pouches and holsters, all loaded with deadly weapons, ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. The only thing his attire lacked was the red symbol on the chest. Before, that symbol used to represent his connection to his family, and its resemblance to the bat symbol served useful in sending fear into the hearts of many of Gotham's criminals. But now, that symbol served no purpose, so he had Wheatley remove it. Plus, he didn't think any of them approve of what he was about to do. Jason looked at the syringe in his gloved hands and storing it in his ring, replying to Wheatley, "You'll see. What's the result of your scouting? Any traps or people hidden in the perimeter?" "I found none at all. Though I do wonder why he would call you out to such an isolated location. There's just this big abandoned building in front of us," Wheatley commented as he stared at the worn-down building in front of them. Jason narrowed his eyes. He had contemplated Hikaru's reasons as well, and the only likely possibilities he thought of were few. First reason, no witnesses to see, hear, or find anything. As someone in the entertainment industry, Hikaru wouldn't want anyone connecting him to a crime, ruin his reputation, and send him to prison. That was probably why he used the stalker as a murder proxy for Goro, who was AI's doctor, and almost AI herself. Heck, maybe he had killed other people through a similar method and their bodies just hadn't been found yet. A quick analysis of recent celebrity deaths told Jason just that. There was a spike in deaths involving female actresses and idols. All of them died because of accidents according to the media and police investigations, but how many of those were actually orchestrated by Hikaru? Second reason, as an extension to the first reason, Hikaru might be the type to obsess or find pleasure and satisfaction in killing people without being touted as the one responsible. There may be some other reason, but it was likely based on some sort of obsession. Jason encountered people with similar obsessive traits before, the Scarecrow being one of them. Third and last reason, whatever Hikaru planned aside from wanting to talk with him, he preferred doing it in a remote area. In addition, how does Hikaru know his name and his origins? That was a question Jason wanted answered, so he analyzed the letter first. Wheatley commented the letter was covered in dark energy before he extracted it, and that meant whatever being made that energy either purposely left it there, or it was tainted because Hikaru himself is possessed by it. The other significant clue he found were the initials Hikaru used. CK. That meant something, but Jason didn't know what. I should be able to find out when I squeeze it out of him. Without further ado, Jason fired his grapple gun, zipping towards the structure as Wheatley returned to him. Found in the middle of the abandoned building was a wide open space filled with overgrown grass and broken furniture. Surrounding it were balconies with old and worn railings. The squeaks of rodents and the sound of crickets filled the abandoned building's halls. The moonlight cast its gentle glow below, illuminating the surroundings, but the phone held by a smiling individual served as another source of light in the darkness. The man possessed blonde hair that reached his neck and was of an average build and height. A black fur coat adorned his figure. His eyes were closed as he scrolled on his phone, yet he paused every few seconds as if he could see the screen's contents. From the third-floor balcony directly across from Hikaru, Jason emerged from the darkness. "Hey bud," Jason greeted with deep sarcasm in his voice. "It was sweet of you to send me a love letter, but sorry, I'm not interested in bastards who want to kill their own wife and kids." Hikaru's smile widened slightly as he raised his head and, despite Hikaru's eyes remaining closed, Jason could feel his stare. "Oh dear. Such hurtful words. But I'm sure you liked what I added at the end there. It must have sent your blood absolutely boiling," Hikaru said, as if he knew Jason personally. "I know you've had your fair share of hardships in the past, but think about how sad would your mother and father would be if they knew you've become a murderer. I'm sure they." A bullet whizzed right by Hikaru's ear, blowing multiple strands of his hair away. The bullet hit the ground behind him, followed by a muffled bang that stayed in the air for a small moment. "Sorry, I must have missed the part where you became my therapist," Jason said calmly with his pistol in his hand before he returned it to its holster. Despite Hikaru's outward nonchalant manner, Jason heard his heart rate spike immediately after the gunshot. The pistols he owned were some of the deadliest handguns known to mankind and have been heavily modified by him. So if Jason truly wanted to hit Hikaru, both Hikaru's chest and head would have been blown to bits and not just have a hole in them. "I see." The gunshot wiped the smile off Hikaru's face and he stored his phone, dusting off his clothes. He didn't even see Jason pull out his gun and shoot it. "You're much more violent than I thought. And here I was thinking we could have a civilized conversation." "Very well. I'll let him handle this from now on." Hikaru slowly opened his eyes. "Oh, I don't think that's Hikaru anymore," Wheatley nervously remarked. "I'm thinking the same thing." Hikaru's presence was still absent, but Jason saw the way he carried himself suddenly change. His body language became more confident and proud. He emitted arrogance from every pore of his body, but the most noticeable detail was his eyes, blazing with an otherworldly energy similar to the one he encountered during Wheatley's past attempt to extract the energy-possessing AI. Pupils in the shape of six-pointed stars, just like AI and her children's according to Wheatley's testament, but Hikaru's was pitch black instead of white or pink. "So, you mind telling me who you are?" Jason asked, his voice steady. He felt a pressure trying to crush him, but it wasn't as bad as the pressure he felt from Joe. The figure smirked, as if amused by Jason's boldness. "I am the Chaos King," he said, his voice deep and ominous. "Lord of Darkness and Chaos, the void before the multiverse, ruler of the dead. And, before you continue, how do you know me?" The Chaos King frowned at the interruption. "I am a being far beyond mortal comprehension and have sent fragments of my energy into this world for tens of thousands of years. You entering this universe sent tiny ripples through its fabric of reality, and I merely traced them back to its origin. But whatever method you used to steal the fragments of my energy is unknown, even to me, and is what first drew my attention to you. Does that answer satisfy you?" Jason slowly nodded. It didn't completely satisfy him, but he had a feeling he should say yes and avoid annoying this Chaos King too much before he could get more information. But at least he now knew what the CK meant. The Chaos King began exuding a dark aura. "Excellent," said the Chaos King as he smiled. "Jason Todd, I have a proposition for you." Jason tensed. He had faced down his fair share of dangerous beings, but this was something else entirely. He could sense the Chaos King's power, even from where he was standing. "And what's that?" he asked warily, his hand hovering over one of his guns. The Chaos King raised his arms wide. "I have been searching for an avatar, Jason Todd. Someone who can embody the chaos and destruction that I seek to unleash upon the multiverse and beyond, returning all to nothingness. And I believe that you have the potential to be that avatar." Jason narrowed his eyes. "I'm not interested in being anyone's puppet. Least of all yours." The Chaos King laughed, his voice like thunder. "You misunderstand, Jason Todd. I am not looking for a puppet. I am looking for a partner. Together, we could rule worlds, bringing about an era of true chaos and destruction. And you would be at the forefront of that world order." "I'll pass," he said coolly. "Your offer sounds good, but I've had enough of being a pawn in someone else's games." The Chaos King's eyes narrowed, his patience clearly wearing thin. "You dare," he growled. "I could break you, just as I have broken so many others, gods and mortals alike. You would be wise to reconsider, Jason Todd. I have the power to grant you unimaginable power you could use to save every innocent person in every world and kill any criminal you deem worthy of death." The tension in the air rose, and both beings felt an imminent battle incoming. Jason simply smirked, his fingers curling around the grip of his gun. "Fine. Since you're being sincere." You want to hear my honest answer? Here it is, he said. I've faced a more powerful being than you, Chaos King, and I'm already working for him. So you can take your offer and shove it. You think you can resist me? I am the embodiment of chaos, the destroyer of worlds. Your will means nothing to me. The Chaos King's face twisted in anger, and with that, the battle was on. With a roar of anger, the Chaos King waved his hand, sending a thick wave of spikes made of darkness towards Jason at blinding speeds. But Jason was ready for it, and he leapt off the balcony. The spikes passed over his head and cleanly pierced through the concrete and the walls behind it. In the air, Jason threw a pair of batarangs at the Chaos King and immediately began sprinting the moment he landed. The Chaos King nonchalantly caught the batarangs with both hands. Foolish mortal. Such an attack will never. The batarangs exploded, and the Chaos King screamed in agony as the acidic shrapnel burned through his face, exposing the muscles and bones beneath and causing the godlike entity to reel in pain. What is this? What have you done? The Chaos King bellowed through the human host's mouth. Surprise, surprise. Acid in the batarangs, the Red Hood said, smirking as he shortened the distance between him and the Chaos King. I figured it was worth a shot to see if it would work on a god, since you still have flesh and bones as you are now. The Chaos King growled, the human host's face contorting grotesquely as he did so. You will pay for this insolence, mortal. You will regret ever crossing me. I've regretted a lot of things in my life, Jason replied, his tone cool and collected. But standing up to tyrants like you isn't one of them. The Chaos King's eyes narrowed, the otherworldly energy around him growing in intensity. You are making a mistake. You are no match for me. I am a god, and you are a mere mortal with toys. Jason grinned, summoning a wave of all blades in the air in a similar manner as the Chaos King attacked. That may be true, but I've got one hell of a toy chest, and you're only possessing a human body. I don't think being in another multiverse is helping you at all. Before Jason could continue, his sense of balance went haywire, and he tripped. He caught himself on the ground, but he was flabbergasted. He never stumbled, no matter how tricky or uneven the ground was. Chaos King, Chaos King. Jason pondered to himself and connected the dots. Chaos. Was it probability manipulation? Jason attempted to stand up, but a blast of dark energy sent him crashing through the wall dozens of feet behind him. The rocks and debris from the crash quickly formed into rings around his body and began applying a significant amount of pressure, crushing him and lifting him off the ground. He could feel his bones cracking. This is only a taste of my power. The Chaos King roared with a hand raised in a grasping manner and with an almost fully healed face. Damn it! Need to distract him. Jason summoned even more all blades, draining himself of more stamina, and sent them towards the Chaos King at blistering speeds with a flick of his wrist. The Chaos King formed a dome of darkness around him, defending himself from the barrage of blades and dropping his control over the stone rings. Now, when Jason's feet touched the ground, he summoned an anti-tank RPG from his ring and waited for the right moment. As soon as the dome began unraveling from the top, he pulled the trigger, launching the rocket. The rocket swiftly shortened the distance, and before the Chaos King could raise the dome again, the rocket made contact. An enormous explosion took place, causing a strong shockwave that shook the entire building and sending a gigantic cloud of dust and debris into the air. Furious, the Chaos King waved the dust clear, revealing his tattered clothes and grotesque figure. His left arm, most of his torso, and half his head were completely missing, but all of it completely regenerated in a mere few seconds. Jason Todd, the Chaos King screamed while almost stumbling into the ground. Show yourself. Doesn't look like you will be able to possess him for long. You look like you're running out of energy. Jason's voice suddenly emanated from every direction, causing the Chaos King to look around in confusion. The black stars on his face flickered every few seconds. Why don't you call it quits and end it here? Go back to where you came from and take all the energy you sent into this world with you. It'll save me the trouble of wasting time and ammo. The Chaos King paused in thought, and instead of responding, closed his eyes. Inside the building, Jason frowned. The Chaos King's silence was strange, and his instinct and intuition were telling him that something was wrong. Jason, an enormous amount of dark energy is incoming, more than we've ever seen before. From where? Up? It's already. Before Jason could react, darkness suddenly and completely enveloped his vision. He could hear nothing, see nothing, and feel nothing. You will become my avatar. I have been dormant for far too long, and it is time for the multiverse to return to nothingness. The Chaos King's voice echoed in his mind and Jason felt a surge of chaotic energy flow inside him. With my power, you will become my instrument to shape the multiverse in my image. The Chaos King poured more energy into him. If the amount before was a mere trickle, the energy flowing inside him now was a large tide. As Jason Todd resisted the overwhelming power of the Chaos King, he felt his mind being assaulted by a maelstrom of emotions and thoughts. Fear, anger, and despair threatened to consume him, but he refused to give in. He knew that if he surrendered, countless lives would be lost in the aftermath, and he couldn't let that happen. In the depths of his mind, he recalled his past failures. But instead of letting those memories break him, he used them to fuel his determination to resist the Chaos King's influence. He thought about the family and friends he lost as well as the innocent lives he had sworn to protect. The image of AI, her children, and the Septimus immediately came to mind. Damn it. And no. Snap out of it, Jason. This is nothing compared to the agony the Joker put you through. Resist it. Remember your training. As the Chaos King's power continued to assault him, Jason focused on his sheer willpower, honed over years of battling the most dangerous villains and overcoming impossible odds. He steeled his mind and body, refusing to give in to the Chaos King's temptations. After an unknown amount of time, Jason felt his will wearing down under the Chaos King's power, yet through sheer determination and grit, he pushed on. How can a human, a mere mortal, possibly stand up to my power? This is impossible, the Chaos King's shouts reverberated in his mind. It can't be. No. Jason blinked and found himself face down on the ground, and he shakily himself off until he stood upright. Despite not being out of breath, he felt fatigued in a way he had never felt before, even worse than what he felt after the Allcast's fatal training that no one survived except him. In front of him, the Chaos King stood. Pure frustration marred his face. The black stars in his eyes were now barely visible and repeatedly flickered in and out of existence. You have defeated me. I do not know how you possess such strength of will, but you have earned my respect, warrior. For such impossible feats, accept the power within you as my tribute, but do not underestimate its potency. It is not something a mortal should wield. Have no doubt that I will show you my true power the next time we battle. And there is no question about that. We will fight once more, for our fates are now intertwined irreversibly. The Chaos King closed his eyes. Till we meet again, Red Hood. Moments later, he opened his eyes once more, but they were now absent of the black stars. The arrogance and pressure the Chaos King exuded vanished along with him. Hikaru looked around in a daze before a look of realization came upon his face. He sneered at Jason, walking towards him slowly. Oh my, what happened to you? You don't look too good there, Jason. Hikaru picked up a rusted crowbar from the ground, dragging it through the rubble as excitement and anticipation grew inside him. Jason waited with his head tilted down. Not answering. Hikaru raised the crowbar. Maybe you need some persuasion. Just before the crowbar landed, a hand suddenly caught it, and Hikaru stared in confusion as the crowbar was slowly bent sideways with a slight twist of the hand. Jason growled, raising his head and glaring at Hikaru. I hate crowbars. Jason's fist struck Hikaru's stomach, punching the air out of him and lifting him high off the ground. Hikaru coughed and gasped for air while hugging his stomach. But you know what I hate more? Jason pulled out the syringe filled with clear orange liquid from his ring and stabbed it into Hikaru's neck, injecting the scarecrow's fear toxin into his bloodstream. Bastards like you. Hikaru cried in pain from the stab before his vision slowly turned red, and his breathing grew rougher. His heart pounded in his chest. He raised his eyes in manic confusion and gasped in fright as the moon turned blood red, painting the world in blood. What's wrong? Hikaru turned to Jason and bolted, crawling away from him while shaking his head and muttering demon over and over again. Are you afraid? Jason asked as he slowly approached Hikaru. Good. Because we're just getting started. And remember, you brought this upon yourself. I'm just giving you what you deserve. No. Please, I won't know. No. Crunch. Chapter 24, Chapter 23, Investigation. Hikaru's limp body left a trail of blood as Jason dragged it to a nearby wall, placing the body upright. A broken and bloody nose, missing teeth, broken bones in multiple areas of the body, and severe bruises were only some of his new injuries. But aside from the physical injuries, Jason had done the most damage to his psyche. Scarecrow's fear toxin induces involuntary and sometimes irrational fear in its victims' minds, driving them insane, and he injected Hikaru with a more potent version of it. He wouldn't be able to live like a normal person ever again. I'm a bit disappointed. He didn't even last 2 minutes. Wheatley manifested and hovered behind Jason, looking at Hikaru's body. I don't think any average person could have lasted even a single minute under the torture session you put him through. Those screams of pain sounded absolutely horrifying. Though I am curious. Is there a particular reason why you've left him alive? Jason shook his head. I'm not leaving him alive. I just wanted to examine my work better. Wheatley, extract. Wheatley floated until he was directly in front of Jason and shook his body from side to side. Well, there's a slight issue. I don't think there is any more primordial dark. Actually, primordial void or chaos energy would be the more accurate description now. Anyway, as I was saying, from what I detected, it seemed like the Chaos King summoned all his fragments of energy in order to turn you into his avatar. And I do mean all of it. You were unconscious, but I saw everything. From my perspective, the entire sky turned pitch black, covering the world in darkness, and it all converged into you and the Chaos King. And let me tell you, the sheer amount of energy he poured into you was absolutely ludicrous. I couldn't believe it at first. Then why don't I feel different? Jason said, lifting his arms and inspecting his whole body. If what the Chaos King said about me having his power is true, then shouldn't I have new powers, or at least change in a noticeable way? You're mostly right in your assumption, but this is power from an entity who existed before the creation of his multiverse. It might take some time to feel the effects, or you might need to learn how to harness the power. Who knows? Jason furrowed his brows and held his chin in thought. Try to contact Joe. He'll know more about this. In the meantime, I'll find out how to access the Chaos King's power. Wheatley nodded, his eye flashing with incomprehensible symbols and characters that made Jason's head ache. And, done. Anything else? No, that's enough. Thanks, Wheatley. No problem, Wheatley said before returning to Jason. Jason raised his head towards the full moon before looking back down at Hikaru's body. Now, what do I do with you? Jason crouched down and stared at Hikaru in thought. If he killed Hikaru, that would mean he'd be murdering AI's ex and the father of her children. But on the other hand, leaving him alive would mean that he'd have to hand Hikaru over to law enforcement with a hard drive containing the evidence he had gathered. Jason hung his head down, sighing to himself. His decision was already obvious. Even if all he wanted to do was to end Hikaru's life right then and there, he couldn't bring himself to kill the father of 2 children who still might want to meet him. Correction, 1 child that still might want to meet him. Jason recalled the moment Aqua's energy signature spiked in response to his emotions. If he correctly interpreted Aqua's body language and his own instinct at that time, Aqua already loathed his father with all of his being. He was the one who suggested that their father was the only one responsible for leaking their address to the stalker that almost took their mother's life. Ruby, on the other hand, was far more optimistic and cheerful than her brother and didn't seem to know who had leaked their address. It also looked like Aqua did not want her to know, and Jason could tell that he just wanted to protect her. It sometimes feels like Aqua's older than he seems, but I guess that just comes with being a really smart kid. All right, Jason said, groaning as rose to his full height. Wheatley. Wheatley manifested. His eye projected a light that produced a glowing green medical capsule in the air. Here you go, Jason. The capsule fell into Jason's hand and he raised it, inspecting it from every angle. It was similar to the Lazarus Pit-based capsule he used to treat AI before, but far less effective. At most, it would stop blood loss and mend small wounds. Hikaru wouldn't continue to live for another 10 minutes if he didn't provide some treatment. Jason reluctantly struck Hikaru with a nerve pinch. Hikaru's eyes instantly opened, and he immediately felt the excruciating pain left by his untreated injuries. He opened his mouth to scream in pain, but the instant he did so, Jason tossed the green capsule into his mouth and closed it shut. If you want to feel less pain, you better gulp that down or I'll make you. Jason glared at Hikaru, making him recall the torture from before, and he instantly obeyed. He swallowed the capsule, wondering if it truly would heal him, and to his surprise, he felt better moments later. He still felt a tremendous amount of pain, but it was more manageable than before. All right, time for you to go back to sleep. Jason backhanded Hikaru's face with just enough force, knocking him out and sending another loose tooth flying away. Jason dusted his gloved hands and took out a scalpel from the ring. Wheatley, the microbomb. 1 microbomb to go. Wheatley produced a tiny metal device in the air that fell on Jason's other hand. If he was going to hand Hikaru over to the police, it wouldn't be without some insurance. I'm not going to make the same mistakes Bruce made. An almost inaudible zipping sound rippled in the air as Jason used his grapple gun to reach his balcony. Just as he untethered the grappling hook, he grabbed onto the railing, gracefully pulling himself up and storing his grapple gun inside the ring. Jason stepped inside his condo, closing the sliding door of the balcony behind him. He pressed a certain part on the side of his helmet, causing it to unlatch and allowing him to take it off. Brushing back his hair, he stared at the reflection of himself on the helmet's surface in silent contemplation before sighing and storing it in the ring. He walked to his bedroom and jumped on the bed after taking everything off except his pants. For a while, he just stared at the ceiling of his room. The moonlight passing through the blinds was the only thing illuminating his surroundings. He didn't need the moonlight to see in the dark, but its serene glow was soothing in a way. I just fought a being that could have annihilated me if I didn't have the enhancement Joe provided. Jason remembered how fast those black spikes pierced through the air and scoffed at himself. I would have been turned into a pincushion. And here I was thinking I would only be dealing with the typical crime boss or metahuman. Should have known things would get worse when I met Bishamon and encountered those phantoms. I'm not cut out for dealing with gods. Jason's eyes abruptly began to grow heavy and a great amount of fatigue washed over him. Strange. Why was he suddenly so tired? It wasn't even midnight yet. Seconds after having that thought, Jason fell into a deep sleep, his chest rising and falling at a steady rate. This time, no nightmares or dreams accompanied him. Only an endless void. Nothing but an endless void. Inside Tokyo's biggest police headquarters, Karasuma, dressed in a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, stood in front of a board filled with multiple images of dead bodies. Below the board was a table with piles of documents and a few cards with a red bat symbol printed on its surface. Printed above and below the symbol was the line, "Let the punishment fit the crime." A stern expression replaced his usual calm. He had been investigating every factor of this case for the past 2 weeks. It was far more severe than he first thought, and it was all done by one man who wore a red helmet, tan leather jacket, and combat armor, according to testimonies from the criminals and the victims. The assassin killed with extreme precision and ruthlessness, always leaving a trail of bodies in his wake. According to the ones left alive, he moved like a blur that couldn't be tracked with the eyes, and that most of them would already be taken out in the first few seconds. It sounded like bullshit to Karasuma, but he could tell that the criminals weren't saying lies. All of them were struck in vital areas once or twice, and each one could have been a fatal blow. The assassin is deadly at close combat, but he knows how to hold back, at least, Karasuma thought. He looked at the images of the people shot in the head with the experienced eyes of an elite soldier. The assassin is clearly well trained with firearms as well. Were they once part of a military? If they're this skilled, they might have been part of a military's special forces. Question is, which one? After the initial report of 53 confirmed dead, they counted a total of 60 people murdered within 48 hours, with at least double the amount of people receiving debilitating injuries such as broken bones and brain trauma. Most of those killed by the assassin had confirmed records of one or a combination of sexual assault, murder, pedophilia, or child molestation. The ones unaccounted for were killed for unknown reasons, but were suspected of having committed similar crimes. The assassin was far too meticulous in who he targeted for it to not be the case. What was strange was that most of the criminals who committed sex-related crimes couldn't be found. Despite the victims all giving testimonies of seeing the assassin confront the perpetrators, the police could not find them or their bodies. Karasuma massaged his forehead with a sigh. We still don't have a clue on who the assassin is, but his motivation and purpose so far are clear. He only kills those who have committed severe crimes and seems to have a personal grudge against any drug dealer that sells to minors. Just then, someone knocked on the door behind him. Come in. The door opened, and a police officer entered. What is it? Asked Karasuma. Karasuma-san, we have a man in our custody you might want to meet. He's in one of the interrogation rooms. Frowning, Karasuma nodded. Lead me to him. This is him. Karasuma asked the officer beside him as he looked at the crazy-looking blonde-haired man in bandages from the other side of the interrogation room mirror. Who is he, and where did you find him? His name is Hikaru Kamiki, 19 years old and a student studying at XXXXXX University. We received an anonymous call from someone saying that they've caught the associate of the stalker that murdered a doctor from Miyazaki and stabbed the idol, AI Hoshino. When we went to the given location, this is the man we found. He was unconscious when we found him, and most of his clothes were torn. He also has many injuries on his body, along with multiple broken bones. To be honest, we thought he was a homeless person who got into an accident at first. Karasuma had heard about the idol case. Who wouldn't when every news outlet and social media site covered the story? So why did you bring him here and take me to him? It sounds like he should have been given the right medical aid first. Because this was on his body. The officer handed Karasuma a familiar calling card with a red bat symbol. With surprise in his eyes, Karasuma inspected the card. It's the same one. The officer continued. After we woke him up, we tried asking him questions, but he couldn't form any coherent sentences. All he kept on repeating was the word demon. Karasuma pocketed the card and walked towards the interrogation room door. I'll see what I can do. For now, get me the stalker that knows this man. Quick. All right, though I doubt the guy in the interrogation room will say anything. He's crazy. Also, be careful with that guy. He got pretty violent when we woke him up. They finally had a lead on the assassin, and he wasn't going to waste this opportunity. Chapter 26, Chapter 24, Change in plans. Half an hour after Karasuma began his interrogation, he exited the room with a deeper frown than the one he had before. The man knew something, but all that came out of his mouth was an incoherent mess, Karasuma thought. Whatever the assassin did to him completely ruined his ability to communicate and instilled deep fear. At least, that's what I could tell from my observation. Karasuma remembered how Hikaru's bloodshot eyes shifted in every direction and how he would turn his head behind him. It looked like he expected someone to just pop out of nowhere, despite them being the only two people in the room. And when he tried to offer a comforting pat on the shoulder, the man recoiled, jumping back and curling into himself while saying, Please. No more. For now, I'll have to see if we can have someone try to treat him and try again next time. Didn't go well, huh? His subordinate asked. Karasuma shook his head in confirmation. No, he's too mentally unstable to communicate with. How'd it go with the stalker? The officer sat on a nearby chair and Karasuma leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. He just arrived and they should bring him here in a few minutes. I wouldn't hold high hopes, though. He was asked questions based on the audio file inside the hard drive that was attached to him, and he answered each one truthfully. Strange thing is, whoever caught him somehow got him to confess his crimes, record, and transfer that confession onto a hard drive, and made him forget that he confessed in the first place. He said he can't even remember who tied him up and made him confess, and that he only remembered watching some videos on his computer after stabbing the idol. He confessed to an attempted murder and a murder of a doctor who we now know to have supposedly went missing years ago, and we're still looking for the doctor's body in the mountains. And all we got from the voice recording were his confessions and a description of the person who gave him AI's private information. Karasuma hummed in interest as he digested that information. There was no connection between the idol's case and the one he was investigating, but his gut told him that they were missing something. Wait, that's it. Karasuma returned his gaze to the officer, his eyes gleaming. You said there was a hard drive attached to the man. The officer nodded, slightly confused by the question. Yeah, it was labeled murder evidence. Did you figure something out? The assassin had a specific pattern. When he first appeared, he left a calling card and, most importantly, a hard drive containing evidence about the operations of the two criminals he killed. He had done it a few more times after that. Same thing with the idol's case. Despite not leaving a calling card behind, there was a conveniently placed hard drive filled with evidence. This fits his modus operandi. You think it's the assassin who got the stalker? Asked the officer, and Karasuma nodded slightly. Why would he, though? Based on what you said, there's no reason for him to target the stalker unless he somehow knew about the stalker stabbing AI Hoshino. But no one knew about it until later. That's what we'll try to figure out. As the officer held his chin and began contemplating, Karasuma returned to the observation room. He continued to observe Hikaru, and as he was watching him, the door opened, and the officer peeked his head. The stalker, Ryuzuki-kun, is here. The officer fully opened the door, revealing the stalker that was being escorted by 2 different officers on each side. He wore a plain green prisoner uniform, and his hands were tightly bound by handcuffs. One of the escorting officers pushed the stalker inside and tilted his cap towards Karasuma. "He's all yours." The 2 closed the door and stayed outside, leaving the 3 of them inside the room. "So, you guys asked for me?" Ryuzyuk asked, only glancing momentarily between the officer behind him and the intimating guy in the front. He could hear some strange muttering from the speakers and he wanted to see who was making those sounds, but he could only see part of the other room from his position. Karasuma crossed his arms as the officer spoke. "According to the voice tape recorded within the hard drive that was attached to you, the one who leaked AI's address and her hospital details was a strange, heavily covered man with blonde hair, correct?" "Why yeah. Why'd you ask?" Ryuzyuk nervously answered. "We want you to confirm if you think this is the right person," said Karasuma as he turned towards the one-way mirror. "Step forward and take a look." Ryuzyuk hesitantly walked forward and turned towards the mirror. When he saw the blonde-haired man in the interrogation room muttering to himself, his eyes lit up with recognition instantly. Not because the man would fit who he remembered giving him the letters, but because of his face. Even though he had tried to reconcile for his crimes by not revealing anything about AI having children or a husband, the face of her son was burned into his mind. It was burned into his mind just as much as the guilt he felt after stabbing AI stirred his conscience. If he tried imagining what AI's son would look like when he grew up, he was sure that he would have a close resemblance to the man in the interrogation room. So this is the man AI hooked up with. Ryuzyuk gulped before nodding his head. "Yeah, that's the guy." Karasuma narrowed his eyes as he turned to Ryuzyuk. "Are you sure it's him? Be honest. Any attempt at lying will come with severe consequences." "I really am sure. But what happened to him? If you don't mind me asking." "There's no need for you to know," Karasuma replied. He was experienced in reading people, and it didn't look like Ryuzyuk was lying. "Thank you for answering our questions, Ryuzyuk-san. Take him back to his cell." The officer nodded and took Ryuzyuk outside, letting the 2 officers escort him back. When he returned, he gave Karasuma a confused look. "Why'd you only ask if he knew Kamiki-kun?" "Because it was the only question worth asking. Here's what I got so far. The assassin somehow knew about the stalker stabbing AI and chased him down. After interrogating him and leaving evidence behind in the form of a hard drive, he called the police and let them take care of the stalker. With the information he acquired, he somehow tracked Kamiki-san down and tortured him to the point that his sanity broke, letting the police apprehend him after and leaving his calling card behind. What do you think?" The officer furrowed his brows. "It does make sense when you put it that way. Well, unless you thought of a better one, it's the only working theory we have and it fits the assassin's motive. You've read what the calling card says. Let the punishment fit the crime. He has a grudge against criminals of the worst kinds, and if what Ryuzyuk-san said is true, Kamiki-san is the accomplice to his crimes. The true mastermind. If we can figure out why Kamiki-san leaked AI's address or if we can help him recover to the point that he can communicate, maybe we'll have a better lead," Karasuma said as he sent a message to his superior asking for assistance. The officer scratched his head and sighed. "Man, this is one difficult case." Inside Jason's condo, Joe and Wheatley hovered next to Jason's bed. "Okay," Joe said as he looked at Jason's unconscious body. "So tell me if I get anything wrong. You 2 fought the Chaos King, the literal embodiment of the void that existed before the current Marvel multiverse inception. While he possessed a human body, yes, and lost. But then he tried turning Jason into his avatar which he failed in doing and rewarded Jason for his victory by letting him keep some of his power. And now Jason hasn't woken up for 28 hours. Did I get everything right?" Wheatley nodded his body. "Yup, that's, pretty much everything. So what do you think is wrong with Jason?" Joe's brows tightened in concentration as he peered into Jason's soul. His eyes glowed with an UNKNOWN color. "He's changing. It's slow, but he's being nourished by the Chaos King's power. I don't think the Chaos King expected Jason to have modified aspects, so he must not have anticipated this to happen. By merging his soul with the beneficial aspects of 8 other souls from some of the best human specimens in his world, Jason now has adaptability and potential growth that far surpasses all of theirs combined along with a host of other benefits. You must have noticed some of them already." Wheatley thought back to all the time Jason went unnoticed, even when he stood in the middle of a bustling crowd of people and stood at his full height, towering over everyone. Well, he did find it strange that people don't notice him anymore until he does something that grabs their attention. Joe nodded. "That's one of the effects all right. All of the people whose souls he merged with were masters of stealth, so it might have culminated into a passive effect where a person's attention will never be on him unless he wills it, or it might be something else. I really can't tell anymore." "Oh." Joe blinked, his eyes turning back to their normal dark brown hue. "Oh well. It doesn't seem to be affecting him negatively, so he'll probably be fine. But I have to do something because if I let this be, it'll take 20 years for his mind, body, and soul to completely adapt to the Chaos King's power." "Oh, what are you gonna do?" Joe smirked. "I'll be back in a jiffy." Immediately after, Joe vanished. "Huh." He laughed, just like th. Boo. AHH. "Oh, my circuits? What? Who said that? Is someone there? Please don't do that. I mean, it's not like I'm easily startled or anything, but that really caught me off guard. I was just minding my own business, you know, floating around, and then you pull this. Boo, seriously, not cool. Wheatley rattled off as he closed his eye. Huh? I'd say I'm sorry, but when you're as old as I am, you'd entertain yourself in any way possible. Hearing Joe's voice, Wheatley peeked his eye open before sighing in relief. Oh, it's just you really got me there. I was all tensed up, thinking something catastrophic was happening. But it's just you, playing pranks. Very funny, Joe. Very funny, indeed. I'll have to remember this for when I have my revenge. I mean, when the time is right. I'll look forward to it. Joe's grin widened as he raised a bright crimson gem floating above his palm. Now, let me see if this works. He slowly lowered it until it hovered just above Jason's forehead. The gem then suddenly glowed and sank into Jason's body until it completely disappeared without leaving a scratch on him. I never thought Jason would come in contact with the Chaos King, but this is good. It'll accelerate his growth, but I will have to delay some of my plans. Joe grinned in anticipation. He could sense the damaged Longinus quickly absorbing a large amount of the Chaos King's power before it became satisfied, using the energy it just absorbed to begin repairing itself and undergoing a metamorphosis. He never thought going to that dead world would have granted him any benefits, but it seems like he was wrong. Is that it? Wheatley questioned. SSH, Joe shushed with his finger on his lips. Just wait. They waited, and moments later, a bright red glow encompassed Jason, slowly turning into a black flame with hints of crimson, completely shrouding him. However, the flames did not burn the bed. Another second passed and the flame vanished, returning to Jason's soul. Success. Joe cheered. Why? What happened? What did you do? That's a surprise you and Jason will find out after he wakes up, which will be in an hour or two, so I'm not needed here anymore. I'll be back in 7 years though. That will be the time needed for Jason to completely adapt to the Chaos King's power. Can't have him go universe hopping with his soul in a state of flux, now can I? Anyways, see ya later. After saying his piece, Joe vanished once more. I am left alone with my thoughts once again. Wheatley sighed. Chapter 27, Chapter 25, Jin Wheatley lightly tapped the side of Jason's face with a solid light robot hand attached to his side. Hello, time to wake up. Wheatley waited for another moment. He's not waking up. Wheatley blinked and shrugged his body. Oh well. Time for me to take some extreme measures, then. Wheatley pulled the robot arm back, clenched its fingers, added a small thruster behind the elbow, and launched it straight at Jason's face. To Wheatley's surprise, Jason's hand suddenly moved, catching the fist and stopping it completely. A groan escaped Jason's mouth. His eyes fluttered open, blinking multiple times. With each blink, his mind grew clearer and processed everything around him. His eyes slowly turned towards the robot fist still clenched in his hand. It seemed his body reacted by itself after sensing an attack. Did you really have to wake me up this way? Jason asked, releasing Wheatley's arm. Wheatley dissolved the arm attached to him. What else would have woken you up? A bomb? To be honest, that was my first choice, but this cozy room of yours would have been destroyed. And it wouldn't have hurt you, anyway. It would have launched you across the room at most. Sighing, Jason sat up while stretching his muscles. Did anything happen while I was unconscious? Last thing he remembered, he was reminiscing on the kind of deal he made and pondering on what his future would be. Joe arrived and did some things. Wheatley circled Jason in the air. Do you feel anything different? Jason frowned as he drew his focus internally to inspect his condition. What happened while I was asleep? Jason could now intuitively tell that if he wanted to, he could control every molecule of his body to the extent that he could trick a machine into giving a false analysis of his body. Aside from that, his senses were much sharper than before. There were more physical changes in his body and mind, but the most glaring change he could sense was the one in his soul. Ever since Wheatley activated, he started to feel his soul. A sense that grew stronger over time, and after the confrontation with the Chaos King, was now far stronger. Strong enough that he could feel something alive inside his soul. Jason furrowed his brows in concentration as he tried to tug on the connection to his soul. This feels strange, like I'm trying to grab a thin string caught in a gust of wind. I'll need to practice this more. It took a minute or two, but he was eventually successful. Jason's shadow then extended from the bed and emerged into the air, forming into a creature. Jason's shadow retracted back to him, and he was left to stare at the creature that emerged from his shadow. It was a bird the size of a crow and had an air of majesty and elegance. Its body, composed of pitch black, crimson-tipped feathers, seemed to absorb all the surrounding light. Its eyes glowed with a crimson hue, staring directly at him. Wheatley stared at it with fascination. Amazing. So this is what Joe stuck inside you. Jason's head turned so quick, Wheatley thought he broke his neck. Jason stared at Wheatley with narrowed eyes. He what? Well, to summarize it, you were unconscious because you were adapting to the Chaos King's power, and it would have taken you around 20 years to do so, according to Joe. In order to shorten the process, Joe brought out a gem, the one on the bird's forehead, and stuck it inside you. From what I saw, it absorbed at least half of the Chaos King's power, which still left you with a tremendous amount and is what allowed you to wake up. And Joe didn't literally shove the gem inside you, by the way. He merely made it pass through your skin harmlessly and let it stay inside your soul. Kneading his forehead, Jason sighed deeply. When Wheatley said Joe stuck an object inside him, he thought Joe shoved a bird down his throat. Anything else I should know? Before Joe left, he said he'd be back in around 7 years because that is the amount of time needed for you to adapt to the Chaos King's power before you could start universe hopping. And that's pretty much it. The hell did he mean by universe hopping? Alright. Thanks, Wheatley. Jason looked back towards the bird, which was still staring at him. So, what do I do with you? Before Jason could decide, the bird transformed, turning into a canine of the same color scheme. It turned into a wolf cub. Oh, it can shapeshift, and it's so adorable. The wolf cub barked before walking up to Jason and standing, placing its paws on his chest while licking his chin. Its tail happily wagged from side to side. What the chuckling? Jason grinned and pulled his head back. Whoa, whoa. Nice to meet you too, little guy. His hand reached the back of its head and began petting it. Its fur was exceedingly soft. Well, I guess you're sticking with me from now on. I'm feeling pretty hungry, so why don't we get some food? Jason looked outside. The clear blue sky and the sun indicated it was noon. Jason had not eaten for a few days. That would have been fine in normal circumstances, but he was famished because of the transformation his body was still going through. It felt like every cell in his body was screaming for sustenance, and he had a feeling this would repeat for a long time. The Chaos King's power was a completely separate matter, however, and he didn't feel that different aside from being able to sense his soul better. Perhaps the adaptation process needed to complete first before he could do anything with it. In any case, he had to find some food. Luckily, he had enough ingredients stocked up. It was enough to last for months. A tiny fraction was inside his huge refrigerator, but most of it was stored in the ring. Wheatley returned to Jason's soul as he headed towards the kitchen and began cooking while the wolf cub watched with a curious look in its eyes. After a while, it seemed to lose interest and began roaming around the condo. I should turn on the TV. Maybe there's some interesting news. Just as Jason wiped his hands clean, he heard a small bark behind him. He turned around and looked down, only to find the wolf cub sitting with the TV remote placed in front. You heard my thoughts? You can understand me. The cub nodded slightly and barked, as if saying, yes, I can understand you. Jason whistled in amazement. He picked up the remote, petting the cub with a smile. Thanks, little guy. Come to think of it, we should get you a name. While Jason pondered on a name for it, the wolf cub had other intentions and its own shadow suddenly emerged from the ground and rose into the air. It turned into Japanese characters that formed a kanji. Jin, is this your name? It literally meant god or deity, which could either be a hint of Jin's true nature or Jin telling him he was an actual god, but had the form of a dog. Are you a god? Jason asked. Might as well ask Jin, since he can understand him. Jin shook its head from side to side, somehow making an unsure expression not unlike a human's, but on a wolf's face. Jason had a feeling it was saying, maybe, or I guess. Not sure? Well, at least I know I can take you with me on my nightly strolls. You must be pretty powerful if Joe left you with me. You also absorbed a powerful being's power, so that should help. Jason stood up as Jin tilted his head with a questioning look. Don't worry. You'll understand everything when the time comes. With a button tap, the TV turned on, and Jason continued his cooking while he listened to the news. Jin, not having anything else to do, jumped on the couch and watched with interest. In a display of unwavering determination and resilience, the popular Japanese idol group Bikomaki, along with their star idol, AI Hoshino, have announced their intention to proceed with their highly anticipated performance at Tokyo Dome, despite a recent unfortunate incident involving their star idol. The incident in question occurred several weeks ago when AI Hoshino, the beloved face of Bikomaki, was involved in a stabbing incident that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry and deeply concerned fans across the nation. The news initially cast doubt on the group's future endeavors, raising questions about their upcoming Tokyo Dome concert. However, in a press conference held earlier today, the members of Bikomaki, flanked by a resolute AI Hoshino, made a courageous statement affirming their determination to move forward. Clad in unity, the idol group conveyed their gratitude to the fans for their unwavering support during this challenging time. AI Hoshino, who showed remarkable strength and resilience, addressed the press with a firm resolve. I am deeply grateful for the love and support we have received. We cannot let a single unfortunate incident define us or overshadow the hard work and dreams we have pursued together. We are committed to bringing joy to our fans through our music and performances. The management of Bikomaki emphasized their dedication to ensuring the safety and well-being of their members and fans. Stringent security measures have been put in place, with close collaboration between the idol group, Tokyo Dome officials, and law enforcement authorities. These measures aim to guarantee the utmost safety and enjoyment for everyone attending the highly anticipated concert. Despite the harrowing incident, ticket sales for the Tokyo Dome performance have not wavered, demonstrating the unwavering support and loyalty of Bikomaki's devoted fan base. The idol group's fan club, known for their fervent dedication, has expressed their solidarity and eagerness to witness the triumphant return of their beloved idols. The Tokyo Dome concert, scheduled to take place on May XX, promises to be a memorable and emotional event for both Bikomaki and their loyal fans. It will not only mark their resilience in the face of adversity, but also serve as a testament to the unbreakable bond between idols and their supporters. Jason hummed. That'll give AI ample amount of time to rest as well as prepare for the performance. Better late than never, I guess. After the stalking incident, more eyes will be on her. The announcement is probably trending on social media right now. After finishing a whole table's worth of food, Jason dressed himself in his practice clothes. A durable compression shirt and form-fitting pants. Jin had returned to his shadow, but Jason knew that if he called for him, Jin would appear. Wheatley, come out, Jason called out. Wheatley manifested in front of him. Hello there, do you need something? Yeah, I want to start training. I have a lot of things I want to find out after Joe's upgrade. Didn't have time to do it before, but now I do. Are you able to activate training mode? Really? I've been waiting for you to ask for that? This'll take 1 second. Wheatley said excitedly before his eye glowed and flashed, covering Jason's body in light. A moment later, Jason found himself inside a top-of-the-line training facility with areas that fit his needs. It was just as the information Wheatley had downloaded into his mind said. He currently stood in the middle of a padded sparring arena, 10 square meters wide. Hello, can you hear me? Wheatley's voice echoed inside his mind. Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Wheatley. Oh, that's good. Just tell me what you need. He had already made up his mind on how he was going to train his newfound combat skills. When he dealt with the criminals around Tokyo, he had stuck to his fighting style. It felt like first nature for him to do that, but as time went on, it felt unsatisfying. With every move he did, there was always that voice inside him that said he could have done it more efficiently and more effectively. But he hadn't done anything because there were things to do, heads to shoot, and criminals to put behind bars. Set my physical condition to before Joe upgraded me. It would be too easy if I had it. Alright, lowering your parameters. Next. Jason instantly felt himself growing weaker until he felt like he was back to normal. His mind was far slower now, and his senses weaker, making him feel like a shell of his former self. This will be fun. Jason sighed internally. Create a replica of Batman based on the information stored inside my soul. It should be a one-to-one copy since Joe said he just turned everyone's skills, memories, experience, and knowledge into data. Yup, I can do that. One Batman coming right up. Then, as if by magic, Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, appeared with his piercing glare fixed on him. Chapter 28, Chapter 26, Jason vs Batman. The knowledge and skills ingrained into him had Jason look at Batman with a new sense of respect. Bruce studied every field of science, mastered almost every form of violence and combat, and learned as many skills and disciplines as he could just so he would be prepared for his crusade against crime. Now, Jason had all of it without having to go through years and years of training and learning, and then some. I feel like a cheat, but there's nothing I can do about it anymore. Jason closed his eyes before taking a deep breath and entering a fighting stance. This time, he was going to change things up a bit. There was only 3 meters between them. Wheatley, don't make him hold back. Make him go for the kill and remove his gadgets. Wheatley sputtered in surprise. Really? Well, suit yourself, then. Following Jason's order, Batman's utility belt vanished. This is gonna be painful for you, but I guess you already knew that. That was fine with him. Jason had become a vessel of formidable power, infused with a potent fusion of knowledge and skills, and he knew that to train effectively, he had to give it his all. Both Batman and him in his current state were almost equal in physicality, approaching the very limit of human potential, but in terms of skill, he had the advantage. He only needed to train until he could integrate all their skills and call them his own. Their eyes locked, the tension palpable in the air. Jason raised his fists, his heart pounding in his chest, fueled by a mixture of determination and a desire to improve. Batman entered his own stance, his expression hardening beneath the mask. Though it was a mere projection, it radiated an aura of strength and determination that was all too familiar. Now that he had Cassandra's ability to read and predict people's actions before they even make them, he could tell what Batman was about to do based on subtle hints and his intuition. Jason wasn't about to let him take the initiative. In a blur of motion, Jason launched himself at the simulated Batman. The clash began, a flurry of blurry strikes and evasions. All of their parries accompanied a lethal strike that the other dodged or a feint that led to a brutal blow. If a single one made direct contact, it would at least cripple a limb or shatter bones. They both anticipated and predicted each other's moves, with Batman being less accurate. Jason used that to his advantage, dodging a lethal elbow strike he saw from a mile away and staggering Batman with a palm heel strike below the chin. Batman seemed to have prepared himself as he used the upward momentum of the strike to counter with an upward kick. Jason leaned back just in time, and the kick missed him by a hair's breadth, but he could still feel the gust of wind it created. Fast as always. The fight went on with both masters of hand-to-combat parrying, dodging, and countering each other's blows. Jason continued to adapt to the unrestrained Batman, who kept switching styles. And like a true martial artist, the longer the fight went on, the more he learned and improved. His moves became more refined, each movement seamlessly transitioning from offense to defense and vice versa. The skills infused into his soul slowly became integrated and fused into a fighting style he could call his own. Adaptive, efficient, fluid, precise, versatile, ruthless. So this is Batman not holding back? He doesn't disappoint. Jason frowned as he caught a kick that would have crushed his rib cage. But I'm done warming up. Adrenaline surged in Jason's veins, pushing his body and mind to the limit. Tightening his grip on Batman's leg, he tugged Batman towards him. With his other hand, he delivered a lightning-fast punch aimed at Batman's exposed abdomen. The impact reverberated through the air. But Batman, a master of resilience, absorbed the blow with a pained groan. With a swift twist of his body, Batman freed his leg from Jason's grasp, retaliating with a rapid succession of strikes. His fists blurred with precision, targeting vital points with each calculated blow. But with his reflexes honed by years of combat and his new ability to predict his opponent's moves, Jason expertly dodged, deflected, and counterattacked with equal ferocity. He would have never been able to do this before, because while he was strong enough to contend and sometimes beat Batman, that was when both of them held back. And he knew that if they both went for the kill, Batman would win 8 out of 10 times simply because he was better and more experienced. Now, the opposite rang true. He now had far more experience ingrained into his soul. He could tell by how he intuitively and instinctively fought and moved in a way he had never done before. But the biggest factor that helped him the most was Cassandra's ability. For Jason, time ran together, the future blending into the moment. A twitch of a muscle and the punch that followed. Both won. He had been calling it prediction, but now he could tell it felt more than that. He knew Batman would feint a jab and a hook before going for a swift thrust to his chest. He knew Batman would shift his weight to his left leg, setting up for a powerful spinning kick. He knew the precise moment when Batman's defenses would momentarily falter, creating the perfect opportunity for a devastating counterstrike. Jason's body moved with an almost supernatural grace, his movements mirroring the flow of his thoughts. Every action, every strike, was executed with flawless precision. He anticipated Batman's every move, seamlessly evading, parrying, and countering with a combination of speed and lethal accuracy. As Batman lunged forward with the expected thrust, Jason sidestepped effortlessly, allowing the attack to sail harmlessly past him. With lightning speed, he seized the opening, launching a thunderous uppercut that connected with the Dark Knight's chin, snapping his head back. The room seemed to freeze for an instant as the impact echoed through the air. Batman staggered, momentarily disoriented by the unexpected blow. Jason didn't relent. He capitalized on the opening, delivering a series of rapid-fire strikes, each one finding its mark with surgical precision. With the knowledge and skills of Cassandra Cain and others ingrained within him, Jason's instinct and intuition were heightened to an unimaginable level. He read Batman's movements like an open book, predicting his every intention with an almost clairvoyant certainty. It was as if time itself bent to his will, the future merging seamlessly with the present. Their fight transformed into a mesmerizing display of choreography, an intricate dance of combat. Jason anticipated Batman's feints, dodging and weaving with a supernatural grace. Batman did the same, but to a lesser degree. He countered with a barrage of lightning-fast strikes, exploiting the smallest openings with deadly accuracy. A newfound confidence radiated from Jason, emanating from the depths of his being. He no longer felt overshadowed by Batman's experience or skill. Instead, he stood as an equal, a force to be reckoned with in his own right. The student had become the master. The fight reached its climax, both combatants pushing their limits. Their movements became even more of a blur, an amalgamation of skill, intuition, and raw power. With one final, devastating strike, he sent Batman crashing to the ground, the impact reverberating through the room. As the echoes of their intense confrontation faded, Jason stood over Batman's fallen form, his chest heaving with exertion. He sported 2 aching bruises beneath his shirt. 2 hits he was too slow to dodge. It was far from perfect, but I could have never beaten Batman like this in the past, even when he was holding back, Jason thought to himself as he sat down, groaning. Back then, he needed a cheap trick or two to even the odds. The battle had proven his newfound prowess, and he could tell that it wouldn't take long before Batman wouldn't be able to provide a true challenge anymore. Maybe fighting 2 Batmans would even the odds. Who knows? Wow, that was incredible. Wheatley materialized, hovering in front of him. I never thought a fight could look so mesmerizing. The way you both went at it, I thought you were a pair of dancing gladiators in some epic battle for the ages. Come to think of it, with how captivating it was, maybe you could become a dancer. Jason chuckled. If Dick or Bruce ever saw me dance, they'd be laughing their asses off. But thanks for the compliment, Wheatley. No, I'm serious. Your graceful movements made it seem like a deadly dance instead of a battle. Really? Jason asked with a raised eyebrow. Perhaps it was Cassandra's style bleeding into his, along with the others. I'm not kidding. Though since you seem recovered, do you want to go for another round? Batman's fallen body vanished from the ground and appeared standing in the middle of the arena again. Jason stood up, stretching his neck and arms. Here's something you should know. I'll never reject the chance to punch Bruce in the face. Chapter 30, Chapter 26.5, Cookie's third-person POV. Mama, do you think Jason-san will like the food? Ruby asked as she carried a bento box in her arms. As thanks for what Jason had done for them and for saving their mother's life, Ruby and her mother came up with the idea of giving Jason homemade cookies. Their first batch of cookies ended up being great, so they chose to pack them immediately. AI looked down at her and smiled reassuringly. Of course he will. I tasted the cookies we made myself, and they're delicious. Ruby still had a doubtful expression. Turning towards her brother, she gave him a questioning look. Aqua sighed. There's no need to worry. They're actually pretty good for your first time. I'm just glad you didn't end up burning them. A smile lit up Ruby's face. Well, I wanted to make sure the cookies we gave Jason-san would taste good, so I did my best. And you did a great job. AI nodded. Do you want to give it to him now? Yay, let's go. AI, Ruby, and Aqua leisurely made their way to Jason's condo. Ruby could hardly contain her excitement, while Aqua's face remained expressionless. They reached his door seconds later, as his condo was on the same floor and wasn't too far from theirs. AI and Aqua looked at Ruby and nodded towards the door. After taking a deep breath, Ruby stood on her toes and reached up, ringing the doorbell. A moment after, they heard a strange whooshing noise and the sound of shuffling, then the sound of footsteps audibly getting close followed. The three of them quietly wondered what the strange noise was as the door opened. Jason wore gray sweatpants and a white compression shirt that revealed his well-built physique. AI's eye twitched, and she kept a conscious effort to make sure her eyes didn't stray downwards. She knew Jason was a fit person, but she didn't expect him to have the physique of a Greek statue. Jason leaned on the doorframe with crossed arms and smiled. Well, if it isn't the Hoshino family, what brought you guys to my humble abode? Good afternoon, Jason. AI returned the smile. We're just here to give you something in return for helping us. She looked at Ruby and gestured with her head. Come on, don't be shy. Ruby raised the bento box towards Jason. I hope you like cookies, she said nervously. Oh, wow. Thank you. Jason gingerly picked up the bento box and opened it, revealing 6 large chocolate chip cookies. They smell and look absolutely delicious. Did you make these yourselves? Yeah. Ruby nodded excitedly before pouting and glaring at Aqua. But brother wouldn't join us in making it. Aqua shrugged. I wouldn't have helped much. Hey, no need to glare at your brother. You did a good job making these, Jason said. Here, I'll try one. As Jason raised the cookie to his mouth, Ruby shuffled her feet nervously. Even AI found herself to be nervous about what Jason's opinion of the cookies would be. Her heart slightly pounded in her chest, and she held her hands together behind her to keep them from fidgeting. Under Ruby's and AI's nervous stares, Jason bit half of the cookie, slowly chewing and savoring the sweet taste. In his opinion, it was pretty good for what seemed to be a first-time attempt at making them. It was slightly overcooked, but everything else was great. These are fantastic, Jason said as he chewed. Ruby cheered while AI held a hand to her chest and sighed in relief. Wait, why was I so nervous? AI thought to herself. Jason tossed the other half into his mouth. I'd eat these every day if I could. Thanks again for the cookies. It's no problem. This is small compared to saving my life and taking care of my children, AI replied, smiling while patting the heads of her children. I won't complain if this is how you repay me. I could eat 10 more of these. Jason shrugged and ate another cookie. How is the preparation for your Tokyo Dome concert coming along? Oh, right. AI straightened, opening her bag and pulled out a ticket before handing it to Jason. What's this? A VIP pass. It was the president and Miyako-san's idea. With this, you won't have to wait in line and you get to see the concert right in front of the stage or from the balcony, AI said as she nervously twiddled her thumbs behind her. You will go, right? I mean, you don't have to if you don't want. I won't miss it. Jason interrupted her with a charming grin. Seeing their interaction, Aqua's eyes shifted between the two of them with suspicion, while Ruby shook him back and forth with excitement. AI's cheeks turned pink, and she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes shifting away from Jason. All right. We'll be on our way now. Thank you for your time, she blurted. AI quickly turned and walked back to their apartment, taking Aqua and Ruby with her. Mama wait, Mama. Seeing all this, Jason chuckled. He closed the door and went back to training. The cookies were a really good break snack. Chapter 31, Chapter 27, New Guns. In the middle of the training arena, Jason weaved through a flurry of strikes from 3 Batmans. After training this way consecutively for hours for 3 days straight, he now had a handle on his new fighting prowess to where he could instinctively read them and not have to decide. Jason diverted a punch into another Batman and swept the third one's legs before creating more distance between them. It wasn't perfect yet. He knew he could still improve, but it wouldn't happen if he just sat here and trained against multiple Batmans. The 3 Batmans surrounded him on all sides, one directly in front of him while the others covered his flanks. It was a good strategy. Unfortunately for them, they were practically open books in his eyes. If he wanted to truly put himself to the test, he needed to go find situations where he'd be forced to adapt and improve against different opponents. Jason struck first, going for the Batman in front of him with extraordinary speed. Batman had almost no chance to react before Jason launched a relentless barrage of blows. Jason could practically see 10 moves ahead, and not even a moment later, he landed a paralyzing nerve strike, disabling the first Batman. The only issue he had right now was the 7 years of waiting for him to adapt to the Chaos King's power. What opponents could he find in this world that could test him while he waited? With the first Batman down, the other 2 knew that the only chance they had of winning was working together. They charged at him with one slightly behind the other while Jason taunted them with his annoying smirk. Not falling for his taunt, the Batmans split and began their 2-pronged assault, hitting him from both sides. The pressure on Jason reached new heights, but confidence shone in his eyes as he dodged their blows flawlessly. He supposed he could contact Bishamon, the hot goddess with the lion. But that would be risky. What if he asked and the fact that a mortal asked to spar offended her to the point that she rained down divine judgment upon him? Tired of just evading, Jason finally struck at the exact moment both Batmans would be left vulnerable, which was a fraction of a second after completing their movement. He pivoted on his left foot, the right coming up and out, catching one Batman squarely in the jaw and disorienting him. But Jason wasn't finished. He leapt over the other Batman's right hook and placed both hands on their shoulder. His legs spun, creating strong momentum he used to imbalance Batman before landing behind him. Grappling Batman's right arm, he pulled and dislocated it from the elbow, creating a dull series of cracks and making Batman grunt in pain. For now, all he could do was to continue training this way and amping up the difficulty through various ways like adding gadgets to the fight. Not giving handicapped Batman a chance to recover, Jason finished him off with a brutal axe kick to the head, knocking him out. Turning to the last Batman that just recovered, Jason stood with his hands to the side, no fighting stance visible. Batman approached cautiously, merely circling Jason and waiting for him to make a move. But when it was clear that Jason wasn't going to make the first move, he rushed from the back. In an unexpected development, Jason closed his eyes, waiting, before slightly moving his head to the side after sensing the slightest change in the air around him. He dodged Batman's punch and grabbed onto the arm, using its momentum to flip Batman on his back. Stop the sequence. Immediately after Jason's order, every Batman in the arena vanished. Ah, it was just getting good. Why didn't you finish the last one off? Because I'm tired, and your narration isn't helping. Jason sighed and went to one of the tables on the side. It had his 1-gallon water bottle and a box of cookies that Ruby and AI made. He opened the box, revealing the one cookie left, before he threw it into his mouth in one go. I was just trying to liven things up a bit, you know? There's not much I can do here aside from helping you with your training and watching you beat Batman up over and over. Jason gulped down the half-gallon of water left and wiped his sweat with a towel. Then I have some good news for you. I'm done training for now. There's an investigation going on about the Red Hood. Based on the information I got, some government agent named Karasuma is the one leading it. Finally, something else to do aside from training. Maybe take a break for a month or two. Yeah, actually, why not make it a year? Don't get your hopes up. Jason smiled wryly. Could you freshen me and my clothes up? Remove the restriction as well. He'd rather not wear sweaty clothes that stuck to his skin. Thank you very much. No problem. A second later, he felt a wave of refreshing aura wash over him, removing the sweat and grime from his body and cleaning his clothes, making them smell freshly washed. Jason sighed in relief and thanked Joe for including this as a function. It was incredibly convenient. After that, the restriction weakening his physique and mind was lifted, returning him to his normal state. Thanks, Wheatley. You're welcome, Jason. Now, would you like me to take us back? Go ahead. An instant later, they exited Wheatley's subspace with the addition of a whooshing sound that wouldn't be out of place in a sci-fi movie. Jason groaned and stretched his arms above his head. I'm hungry as hell, so how about I cook a family meal for myself? I need the energy after that training session. So, what are you planning? Wheatley asked as he and Jason, dressed in his vigilante attire, sat on a rooftop early in the evening. The sun had just set, casting the city in twilight. The new babies I'm gonna use. Jason grinned and reviewed the blueprints in his head. He had used the memories of the other Jasons as inspiration because who would reject those kind of pistols and ammo? Wheatley narrowed his eye and slowly revolved around him. Interesting, interesting. Gonna send the plans to me or? Sending them, now. Wheatley's eye widened in surprise. Oh, this is quite an intriguing pair of firearms and ammunition. You want me to use these materials as well, huh? Do you want me to make them now? Jason nodded. Yes. I want to test them out in the field as soon as I can. All right. Just give me a minute, and you should have a new pair of pistols and ammunition that'll last you for a couple months. Wheatley's eye flashed and projected a wide curtain of light that began constructing the pistols and ammunition. I'll leave you to it while I check on the police investigation. On his laptop, he opened the communication channels and data servers of the police networks within Tokyo. It seemed they found the connection between AI, her stalker, and her ex. The one leading the case, Karasuma, had contacted his higher UPS for assistance, requesting for professional psychiatrists to treat AI's husband. After reading that piece of information, Jason scoffed. Good luck with that. If the effects of Scarecrow's fear toxin were that easy to fix, Batman wouldn't have needed to create antidotes for it. But come to think of it, he was looking for a way to create a personal network of connections, so getting in contact with the government through Karasuma would be his best bet. The man was already desperate for information, so why not just introduce himself in person? And I'm done. Jason turned to look at Wheatley and found a pair of gray pistols along with dozens of ammo magazines loaded with his custom bullets placed on top of a surface of solid light. So, what do you think? Got any corrections you might want me to make? None. Jason made his way to the hovering table of solid light with the weapons and ammunition and picked up the pistols, aiming them at imaginary targets and testing their weight. The pistols possessed a sleek and modern design, crafted with a combination of matte black metal and reinforced polymer components. The overall aesthetic was both stylish and functional, reflecting his pragmatic approach to combat. Since he didn't have to worry about cost and difficulty of production, he made it as powerful as he could without sacrificing functionality. They looked big, even in his hands. Depleted promethium pistols. The most powerful metal I could think of that wouldn't have been wasted as handguns. And Jason pressed a small switch on both handguns with moderate amounts of force. One handgun's rear and handle shifted while the other one's rear extended, becoming a stock. He placed the stocked handgun into the open space of the other and merged them. Now, instead of handguns, he had a sniper. They're capable of becoming a sniper rifle. The versatility of that weapon is just amazing. Jason smirked as he looked down the scope. Wait till you see what the ammo can do. He picked up one magazine and inspected it. Titanium composite hollow point bullets with a C4 kicker. Fastest, most explosive ammo in the world. The magazine fit into the gun slot with a click and Jason had the urge to test it out immediately, but that would just be wasting bullets. Releasing a disappointed sigh, he returned the pistols back to normal and replaced the ones in his holsters. As for the dozens of magazines, he stored most of them inside his ring and kept some out just in case. We'll get to use them eventually. Just not now. Then what's your next course of action? Jason brought out his grapple gun and activated his voice modulator, distorting his voice. Let's go visit a fan of mine. Chapter 32, Chapter 28, Crescent Moon. The pale glow of the full moon spilled through the windows, casting ethereal light upon Karasuma's office, painting the room in a soft, silver luminescence. As he lifted a cup of delicious coffee to his lips, Karasuma took a moment to enjoy the warmth of the cup and the rich smell of the coffee. It calmed his nerves. Their investigation on the mass murderer/assassin/vigilante had reached a plateau. After the imprisonment of Hikaru Kamiki, activity from the man had ceased, leaving them in the dark. They didn't know if he was resting, biding his time, or if he had already left the city. For now, they can only wait as the psychiatrists and psychologists he had called in did their best to treat and retrieve information from the man. Problem is, they were barely making any progress. They underestimated how mentally, physically, and emotionally unstable Hikaru was. It didn't help that they detected an unknown chemical compound in his system that impaired his brain's functions. They theorized it to be the leading cause of the man's mental and emotional instability, and for his own safety, they had to restrain and sedate him. Despite their efforts, they had made no progress in developing an antidote. Karasuma sighed after drinking the last sip of coffee. He was exhausted. There were no more leads and no more ways to track their target. Now, they had to play the waiting game. I wonder who it really is behind all this. Clicking his tongue, Karasuma turned with his empty cup in hand, about to head to the staff kitchen and get something to eat. But when he turned around, he immediately let go of the cup and raised his fists in alarm. The cup shattered as it hit the floor, its brittle body fracturing into countless shards of porcelain. Leaning on the office door with his arms crossed was what looked to be a massive, white-haired Caucasian man in his 30s wearing a tan-brown jacket. A black eye patch covered his right eye. How did he get in? I didn't even notice him entering the room. Karasuma's jaw tightened with worry. I heard you've been looking for me, Tadayama Karasuma, the man said casually. His deep voice was steady, as if he hadn't just broken into a secure facility. Well, here I am. Don't worry. I'm not here to kill you. You'd have been dead already if I was. Karasuma's thoughts were in disarray, yet he remained as calm as he could be in front of the man's subtle threat. This was the murderer they were looking for all this time? And the man knew his name somehow. His mind raced with questions, but he asked the one most important to him as of this moment. Who are you? The man almost looked bored as he answered. I'm a mercenary and assassin for hire, at your service. But you can call me Deathstroke. Deathstroke, Karasuma repeated to himself. It didn't ring any bells. You're a hired gun? That doesn't explain why you subdued all those criminals. With how you left behind a calling card, I'd call you a vigilante instead, Karasuma said. Deathstroke shrugged. This city needed some cleaning up, and I took it upon myself to do it. It's not my fault that drug trafficking has been flourishing here. What about the rapists and pedophiles? As far as I'm concerned, those bastards had it coming. I know you've investigated my case. You've seen what those pieces of shit did to their victims, including the kids. Can you honestly tell me they deserve better? Deathstroke replied with an ice-cold glare. The police aren't doing a good job, either. I know about the bribes and corruption plaguing it. I'd suspect some of your superiors know about it as well and have turned a blind eye. That wasn't news to Karasuma, but he frowned at the implications of that statement. Then tell me, why are you here? In response, Deathstroke pulled something out of his jacket's inside pocket and tossed it to him. Karasuma caught it and inspected the hard drive in his hand. You see, I just moved into this country and I wanted to make some connections. Aside from a way to contact me, you'll find my information on that drive. I assure you I only offer the best services. Plus, you've seen what I can do, said Deathstroke, the edges of his lips curling up. I have. Karasuma nodded with furrowed brows and placed the drive on the table behind him, his eyes locked on Deathstroke as he did so. At least he finally had something definitive he could give to his higher UPS. Are you not afraid of being captured? There are dozens of officers in this building, and there's only one of you, he said threateningly. Deathstroke snorted, an arrogant smile plastered on his face. All of you against me? No chance in hell. You'd have better luck winning the lottery than beating me. How are you so sure of that? Karasuma cautiously asked. Karasuma blinked, and Deathstroke had suddenly vanished. Alarms instantly rang inside his head, but before he could even move, he felt the cold touch of metal on his throat. A knife. Karasuma stayed still, his heart slightly pounding in his chest. How the hell did he do that? Do you understand now? Karasuma suppressed the urge to gulp as Deathstroke pressed the knife into his skin. Not enough to draw blood, but enough to reinforce his point. Stay out of my business, and I won't cause problems. That's my message to you and your superiors. Do I make myself clear? Deathstroke said slowly. Understood, Karasuma calmly replied. Good. As soon as Karasuma no longer felt the blade on his neck, he put as much distance before him and Deathstroke. But when he looked behind him, Deathstroke had somehow already vanished into thin air. Thinking he was hiding somewhere, Karasuma searched, checking every inch of the room, but he was nowhere to be found. Still, he couldn't believe it. How could someone disappear like that? Finally able to take a breath, Karasuma sat down in a chair. He stared at the ceiling while rubbing his neck, remembering the icy touch of the knife. His training in the elite forces and the many dangerous situations he'd experienced left him thinking there was no one in the world he couldn't match or at least fight off in combat. Now he knew better. As Karasuma thought back to the moment Deathstroke snuck up behind him in the literal blink of an eye, he could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Deathstroke is far more dangerous than I ever thought. Who trained him? Where did he come from? How has he stayed off-grid for this long? These questions were at the forefront of Karasuma's mind. He found it highly unlikely that someone with Deathstroke's capabilities and name wouldn't be infamous in some part of the world. Furthermore, he couldn't recall anyone with such skill on their list of prime suspects, including internationally infamous assassins and mercenaries. Karasuma let out a heavy sigh. We at least know who we're dealing with now, even if we don't know his true identity. His eyes locked onto the hard drive on the table. Should he count himself lucky that Deathstroke revealed himself and saved him the trouble of finding him? Karasuma shook his head at that notion. His superiors will most likely want to investigate and interrogate Deathstroke with more fervor than before, and he'll be the middleman. Karasuma grabbed his phone from his pocket and dialed a number. Agent Karasuma, what matter is so important that you had to call at this time? I apologize for calling this late, sir. But I just met. Please hold on for a moment. Someone else is calling, the chief of staff interrupted. It irritated Karasuma, but there was nothing he could do but wait. As he waited, the light from outside noticeably dimmed. But as far as he knew, it wasn't cloudy outside, and it was a full moon today. Curious about the cause, Karasuma looked outside the window. What he saw made him stand up, and shock instantly filled his system. He rubbed his eyes and shook his head, thinking he was hallucinating. Yet, when he looked back at the moon, what he saw remained the same. Up in the night sky, a crescent moon drew his eyes. A crescent moon, not a full moon like it was supposed to be. The moon had somehow lost an enormous chunk of itself, leaving a gaping hole that would permanently make it crescent-shaped. Agent Karasuma? Agent Karasuma, the chief of staff's panicked voice echoed from the phone. I apologize, but there's an urgent matter I need to attend to. Is it about the moon, sir? Karasuma asked. It is. I'll contact you again once I'm done, the chief answered before ending the call. Karasuma crashed back into the chair, massaging his temple, his elbow on one knee. I need to go on a vacation. After his friendly conversation with Karasuma, Jason made his way back to his condo, dashing on top of rooftops. That is an incredible piece of technology right there, Wheatley commented as Jason took off his smart mask and eye patch, returning to his normal face. I can't believe how you're able to change your face just like that. Convenient, isn't it? Jason stored the mask and the eye patch and put on his Red Hood helmet. Though I do have a question. Why'd you go through all that trouble of convincing him you were someone else? You could have just worn your helmet. And they won't be able to find anything on you, anyway. You're not a native of this world. True, but you can never be too cautious when dealing with governments. Look, I had one reason in mind when I did that. By giving them a name and a face, I'll be able to operate without worrying about the government trying to figure out who I really am. Mostly, anyway. If I didn't do that, they would just keep pestering about my identity. Oh, I see. Didn't think of that. Hold on. What's going on? As soon as Jason noticed the light coming from the moon dimming, he stopped in his tracks. There were no clouds in the sky blocking the moon, and with his extraordinary vision, he had a clear look at the moon. Ah shit. What the hell happened? I'm not seeing things, right? It looks like the moon is missing around 70% of its mass. It resembles that one human food, a croissant? Or a curled up shrimp. Jason immediately brought out his tablet and checked the government and military channels for any clue about what had happened to the moon. However, no matter how much he searched, he couldn't find anything. Damn it. Jason frowned as he looked double and triple checked every channel. Nothing. You don't think it's because of aliens, do you? 'Cause I can't think of anything in human hands capable of doing that to the moon. I don't think so. At least, that doesn't seem to be the case, Jason said, with doubt in his voice. Based on previous events that happened in his old world, someone rich and powerful might have done it for some fucked up reason. With an annoyed click of his tongue, Jason stored the tablet and continued on his way. The moon losing that much mass will cause issues, but nothing too big. Jason performed some quick calculations in his head. The moon will move closer to Earth because of how little mass it has now than before. It'll also start orbiting the planet faster because of the closer proximity. There's more, but I don't need to explain them. You'll find out when the world goes crazy over this. It'll be all over news broadcasts and social media. Still, what the hell could destroy the moon? He'd play the waiting game for now and see what happens. Chapter 33, Chapter 28.5, Comfort. It was a chilly Saturday night. Ruby and Aqua had come over for dinner and were immediately enamored by Jin. Your dog is so cute, Ruby squealed, crouching down and patting Jin's head. Where'd you find him? A friend of mine couldn't take care of him, so they gave him to me, Jason answered, watching as Jin closed his eyes and wagged his tail under Ruby's pats. Jason was slightly apprehensive about letting her get close at first. Jin wasn't a normal wolf pup, after all. But the pup didn't seem to mind. Through their connection that's been developing ever since he and Jin met, he could feel his surface-level emotions. Jin was enjoying the pats immensely. While meditating this morning, it surprised him when he felt Jin was still absorbing what was left of the Chaos King's powerful energy. It seemed as if he has been doing so passively ever since he had woken up from the small coma. Jason didn't know if it was a positive or a negative, but at least this would mean it wouldn't take 7 years for him to start world hopping, as Joe put it. He could sense the energy coursing through his body with greater clarity and could feel his body gradually adapting and growing stronger. No possibility of harnessing it yet, though. Whenever he tried to get control the energy, it felt like he was trying to hold water with holes in his hands. It might only take a year or two to finish at this rate. Aqua crouched down beside Ruby and started rubbing Jin's chin while noting the lack of a name tag. Does he have a name? Jin, Jason said. Jin let out a small yip as if to confirm his answer. Well, hello Jin. Ruby raised Jin until they were face to face. She gave him a bright smile. I'm Ruby. It's nice to meet you. Jin happily yipped. She turned Jin around until he faced Aqua. This is Aqua, my brother. Jin happily yipped again, and Ruby giggled at his cuteness. Even the normally stoic Aqua couldn't help but smile. Where's your mother? Is she at work? Asked Jason. With his senses, it wasn't hard to hear AI. And if he wanted to, he could home in on AI's voice specifically, but he didn't want to intrude on her privacy. Nope, Mama's at home. Ruby shook her head. But she's in a call with Seta-san. I think they were talking about the Tokyo Dome concert. I'm so excited about it. It's going to be awesome. Oh right. It's happening in a few days, isn't it? It's quite a big event. The extra publicity from what happened to AI seemed to have bolstered its sales because the tickets sold out in just 15 minutes, Aqua added. Jason let out a low whistle. Damn. Well, you two play with Jin or watch something on the TV. I'll make dinner. Any requests? Oh, Ruby raised her hand excitedly. What about katsu chicken curry rice? Aqua shrugged and turned on the TV before switching to an anime called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't have a preference. Besides, anything you make tastes good, Jason-san. Got it. Jason nodded and headed to the fridge. By the way, you two can just call me Jay instead of Jason if you want to. It's easier to say. Okay, Jay-san. Okay, Jay-san. Jason snorted at the big difference in the way they responded. I just know those two are gonna annoy the hell out of each other when they grow up. Jason let his mind wander as he prepared ingredients on autopilot, which involved cutting meat and vegetables, mixing spices with herbs, and prepping everything else. It wasn't difficult when you had the experience of a chef. He was just glad his bulky grocery trip was worth it. The ring could conveniently preserve food since time doesn't pass inside it. Again, he really wanted to know how the ring worked. Ruby's giggles and Jin's yips as they played, and the sound of Aqua's anime served as his background noise. Oh, you're approaching me? Instead of running away, you come right to me? Even though your grandfather, Joseph, told you the secret of the world, like an exam student scrambling to finish the problems on an exam until the last moments before the chime. I can't beat the shit out of you without getting closer. Oh ho, then come as close as you like. Jason's sweat dropped, perplexed by the sound coming from the TV. Should a 4-year-old kid really be watching that? Shaking his head, he returned his focus to his cooking. I wonder when those drug dealers will pop up again. I haven't been actively looking for them for a while, so they're probably out and about again. They're probably also being more discreet, unlike last time. Shouldn't be too hard to find them, though. He tossed the chopped onion into the hot pot with olive oil, adding the carrots and potatoes later, and sautéed them all together. Jason poured half a liter of water and heated it up to a boil before he covered it. It should simmer for about 10 minutes. There's the issue of the Chaos King's energy being gone from this world. It may have made people commit horrible acts, but I could at least pinpoint where they were. Jason frowned. Looks like I'm back to monitoring the police scanner and going on patrols. But I seriously doubt there'll be anything similar to the crimes that happened in Gotham. Compared to Gotham, Tokyo's crime rate is incredibly low, but sexual harassment is prevalent. Perverts groping women on trains being a prime example. It's such a big issue that trains even have women-only cars. Jason sliced 4 chicken breasts into 4 pieces, placing them on top of 4 plates of rice before adding the curry. A tantalizing fragrance filled the air, a harmonious blend of rich spices and savory notes. He set them all on the table along with the utensils. Aqua, Ruby. Dinner's ready. Jason called out. Coming. Ruby responded before getting off the couch where she was hugging Jin. Aqua eagerly followed. Just as Jason put down the last cup of tea, he heard a set of footsteps coming closer and counted down. 3, 2, 1. She's here. The doorbell rang. It's Mama. I'll get it, said Jason. He opened the door with a smile, welcoming AI, though he had to look down quite a bit because of their height difference. AI apologetically smiled. Good evening, Jason. Sorry I'm late. Don't worry, you made it just in time for dinner. Come on in. AI nodded and followed Jason inside after removing her shoes. Pardon for the intrusion. Ruby, Aqua, how ha mmph. The moment they reached the living room, AI was smothered by a fluffy object. Ruby grinned as she held Jin up to AI's face. Mama, meet Jin? He's Jason's new puppy. Isn't he cute? Pwah. AI took a deep breath after freeing herself and finally got a good look. Oh, Jason got a puppy? He's adorable. Jason sighed. Come on, you three. You guys can play with Jin after we eat. AI pouted. She looked at Jin with reluctance in her eyes, giving him one last pat on the head before heading to the dining table. With nothing else to do, Jin lay down on the ground with his head on his front paws and closed his eyes. You're not gonna feed him? Ruby asked with a tilt of her head. Jason ruffled her hair. I already fed him before you guys came over. Now, come on. The food's getting cold. He sat down with Ruby beside him, while AI and Aqua sat on the opposite side. Ruby and Aqua couldn't stop praising your food, so I've been waiting to get a taste. AI said, taking in the food's smell. She could feel her mouth immediately watering. Ruby took a big whiff of the plate in front of her. It smells so good. Wait until you taste it, Jason said with a confident grin. Clapping their hands together, they all spoke in unison, Itadakimasu. Ruby and Aqua started eagerly eating spoonfuls of the curry rice. It's so good. After tucking her hair behind her ear, AI calmly ate one spoonful. She closed her eyes, savoring the taste. A moan of pleasure escaped her. It's delicious. Seeing them eat so enthusiastically, Jason chuckled. Slow down. I made more than enough, so if you want seconds, just tell me. Not even 10 minutes later, AI, Ruby, and Aqua all sat back in their chairs with satisfied faces. In the middle of eating, Aqua and Ruby even started competing with each other. Needless to say, it did not go well for their stomachs. Meanwhile, Jason felt he could eat 10 times more food. His body broke down whatever he consumed far more efficiently and effectively, so even eating a whole roasted pig wouldn't fill his stomach. Ruby pat her stomach. I ate so much, my stomach's close to bursting. Aqua groaned in agreement. That wouldn't have happened if you controlled yourself. Jason's eyebrow rose. Though I'm impressed. You and Aqua even went for thirds. AI giggled. I don't blame them. I would have kept eating as well. Unfortunately, the Dome concert is coming up and I need to be in my best physical shape. I've been working out a lot more and eating less than usual, but I can't tell if it's working. Don't worry. I can tell it's definitely working. Jason held her eyes and gave her a subtle smile. Caught off guard, it took AI a moment to realize what he meant, and she blushed up a storm at the unexpected compliment. He stood up and piled the plates together. I'll go wash the dishes. Okay. The siblings groaned in response with their eyes closed, unaware of the exchange that had just happened. I'll help as well, AI said after coming out of her daze, standing up and helping Jason pile the dishes together. Thanks, AI, said Jason before they walked to the sink, plates in hand. The sound of running water filled their area. He silently and slowly worked on washing the dishes, with AI doing the same. Time passed by like this while he debated on telling her about Hikaru. Not everything, though. Just that one of his connections in the police force told him about someone with the same name and description being caught because her stalker confessed the identity of the person who leaked AI's address. Are you okay, Jason? AI asked with worry on her face, interrupting his train of thought. Yeah, I'm fine. He waved away her concerns before going back to washing the dishes. But there's something you should know. What is it? It's about your stalker and the person who leaked your address. He was watching her reaction using his peripheral vision, and the moment he said that, AI froze. I have some connections in the police force, and they said he confessed the description of the one who leaked your address. AI's breath hitched. It took a while, but they caught the guy. Someone named Hikaru Kamiki. I just thought you should know since he's the father of AI. Jason stopped washing the dishes and called out in worry. Trembling, AI cried, but he could tell it wasn't out of fear or worry, but relief. Still, he ask. AI, did I upset you? I'm so. And no. AI shook her head, sniffling, and tried to wipe the tears that just kept flowing. Her voice shook, and she spoke in whispers, I'm just relieved. While in the hospital, I thought about how the stalker found me. I knew it was Hikaru who gave the stalker our address because I was the one who told him the day before. But I didn't know what to do. Whenever I remembered how close I was to dying and leaving my children behind, I'd break down in fear. What if I told the police, and he did something even worse, like putting Aqua and Ruby in danger? I couldn't do that knowing he was still out there somewhere. So that's why. Jason finally understood. He had been curious about if she had connected the dots or not, and whether she would report it to the police. It turned out she had realized who leaked her address, but the fear and trauma induced by her near-death experience prevented her from doing anything. I should have tortured that bastard more. It's all right now. Jason turned the faucet off and wiped his hands dry before putting a comforting hand on her shoulder. He wasn't that great with words of comfort. Suddenly, AI turned and hugged a surprised Jason, pressing her face into his chest. Jason hesitated. His hands hovered over her shaking body for a moment before he returned the hug, one hand soothingly rubbing her back. Thank you, Jason, AI whispered. Why are you thanking me? I didn't do anything to help. Dummy. I'm thanking you for the food. Jason chuckled. AI smiled to herself. She didn't know what he did, but her gut was telling her the only reason Hikaru was caught was because of Jason. Feeling quite comfortable and secure in his arms, AI tightened her hug just a bit more. Chapter 34, Chapter 29, First Job, 1/2. The next morning, after meeting Karasuma, Wheatley hovered in front of the TV, watching the news about the now permanently crescent moon with interest. On the TV, the news anchor sat at her table with an image of the moon displayed on the top right of the screen. This is an urgent news update, brought to you by Tokyo Today News. In a shocking turn of events, the moon, our celestial neighbor, has been rocked by a catastrophic explosion, resulting in a permanent crescent shape that has left the world in awe and disbelief. Eyewitnesses and satellite imagery confirm the unprecedented destruction that has taken place, with a staggering 70% of the moon's mass seemingly vanishing into thin air while a ring of debris orbits the moon. The aftermath of this cosmic event has left scientists and astronomers scrambling for answers, trying to make sense of this unimaginable phenomenon. News of the moon's transformation has spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of people around the globe. Social media platforms have erupted with discussions, theories, and awe-stricken reactions as individuals grapple with the implications of such an extraordinary event. The crescent-shaped moon now hangs in the night sky, a haunting reminder of the incident. Stargazers and dreamers alike find themselves in a state of wonder, contemplating the mysteries of the universe and the cosmic forces at play. World leaders, scientists, and astronomers are convening emergency meetings to assess the impact of this lunar catastrophe on Earth. Speculation abounds as to whether this event will have any significant ramifications on tides, weather patterns, or the delicate balance of our planet's ecosystem. For now, the world watches with bated breath, searching for answers amidst this celestial enigma. We will continue to bring you the latest updates as scientists work tirelessly to unravel the secrets behind the moon's shocking transformation. Stay tuned to Tokyo Today News for ongoing coverage of this unprecedented event, as we strive to bring you the most accurate and up-to-date information in these uncertain times. This has been a special news report from Tokyo Today News. See, what did I tell you? The world's attention is going to be on the moon for a long time from now on. I knew it would get this far, just didn't know for certain the extent of it. Also, are you alright? I know you wanted the weights to be that heavy. But isn't doing that difficult, especially when you're upside down? Yeah, just not used to doing calisthenics this way. Inside the training space, Jason could hear the news report while he worked out. He grunted as he performed one arm thumb and index finger handstand push ups. On his upper body was a weighted vest along with a weighted plate attached to the back and front. The vest and plates were produced by Wheatley, made with an incredibly dense alloy. His body stayed stable and upright with each repetition, but each push took a lot of effort, even for him. But what else, aside from 13 metric tons of total weight and balancing his whole body on 2 fingers, could give him a good workout? Balancing wasn't really the hard part. That part was a cinch. It was the additional weight giving him a hard time. The weight made it so that it felt as if his body was as heavy as a truck. Obviously, this much weight on a small surface wouldn't bode well for the structural integrity of his condo's floor, so he did his workout in the training space instead. A single drop of sweat dripped from his nose and fell on the floor. 498, 499, 500. Finally reaching his 250 reps for each arm, Jason pushed off the ground with his hand, launching himself high into the air, and perfectly landed after doing a double mid-air flip. The sound of a roaring applause echoed in the training space. I give that a 10 out 10. Remarkable. Thanks, but this is just a warm-up. He barely broke a sweat from that endurance workout. Just as Jason finished wiping down his sweat, the doorbell rang. Whoops. Looks like you have visitors, Jason. Might want to freshen up a bit before you meet them. After removing the vest and putting his red shirt back on, Wheatley cleansed his body, removing the remnants of his workout. A moment later, he was back in his condo while Wheatley activated stealth mode. I can hear 3 distinct heartbeats. Ruby, Aqua, and Miyako. Do they need something? Their heart rates and breathing seemed normal, at least. Curious, Jason opened the door, only to see Ruby and Aqua in their blue preschool uniforms and Miyako in a casual, beige-colored work dress. Good morning. Good morning, as well. I hope we're not bothering you, Jason-san, Miyako responded. Jason shook his head. It's not a bother. Good morning, Jason. Ruby cheerfully greeted. Hey, did you see the news about the moon? It exploded. Well, of course. It's been all over social media as well. Jason nodded and smiled. It was difficult not to when faced with such morning optimism. What do you think happened to it? Asked Ruby. Do you think the world's gonna end because the moon is gonna crash on Earth? I don't have an answer to the first question. It was quite sudden, and none of the experts know what actually happened. For your second question, no, I don't think the world's gonna end anytime soon. How are you so sure? Miyako asked with worry on her face. It was clear to him that the moon exploding had shaken her quite a bit. Jason shrugged. Gut instinct. What do you all think caused the moon to explode? I think aliens did it. Ruby proclaimed. She certainly has an active imagination. Jason thought. And I told you, aliens don't exist, Aqua retorted. From his tone, Jason guessed this wasn't the first time this particular exchange happened. If it were aliens, there'd be some form of evidence left behind by the weapon they used. Also, what would be the point of blowing up the moon? If they want to blow something up, they might as well blow up Earth. Ruby scoffed and turned her head away from her brother. For all we know, this might just be a prank by them. And as if aliens would be dumb enough to leave evidence behind. If aliens were pranksters, then they're the worst pranksters in the entire universe. Aqua deadpanned. Now, calm down, you two, Miyako said after seeing the situation escalate while she patted their heads. Don't you have something more important to ask to Jason-san? Oh, right, Aqua, and Ruby blinked, finally remembering the sole reason they came here. Ruby approached Jason and held his hand while cutely looking up with puppy dog eyes. Jason, can you take us to school? Jason turned his head away in an attempt to hide from the great source of cuteness in front of him. Puppy dog eyes is super effective, Wheatley announced, watching from the sidelines with great interest. Shut up. That's fine with me. Jason scratched his head. But why can't Miyako take you? Miyako smiled apologetically. About that? The organization is quite busy at the moment due to the Tokyo Dome concert being so close. I'm helping my husband with the substantial legislative work, and we don't want to leave the Go Kids' safety in the hands of a stranger. Jason ignored the change of words mid-sentence and nodded his head in understanding. I see. Ruby shook his hand with a pouty face. Please take us to school. If you don't accept, we'll have to go by ourselves. He didn't think they would do that, but the attempt at persuasion was decent. Whoa, who said I'm not taking you? Jason replied with a smile and Ruby's eyes lit up. Luckily for you two, I got a new car just a few days ago. It took a bit of work, including forging documents, including a license, and hacking into databases. But now he could drive around with his own vehicles without having to worry of being caught using an unregistered car. The one he currently had was a custom car forged by Wheatley, fitted and customized to his needs and wants. It wasn't the best car he could have had Wheatley produce. He didn't think such a car would be necessary while staying in Tokyo, and for his nightly patrols, he preferred riding a motorcycle. All right. Ruby cheered. Does this mean that you'll take us to school again if we ask? Jason raised an eyebrow of doubt. Not all the time, but on most days? Probably. Miyako sighed in relief and bowed. Thank you for doing us this favor, Jason-san. We'll be sure to repay it after the Tokyo Dome concert is over. It's no issue, Miyako-san. Jason ruffled Aqua's and Ruby's hair. Taking care of these two is a far better use of my time. These days, I usually just sit at home and work out. Regardless, thank you, Miyako repeated. All right, you guys should come inside. I'm just going to change clothes and get the car keys. Minutes later, they all stood at his car's parking space. Jason donned a black shirt, a red hooded jacket, and black cargo pants. Whoa, Ruby, Aqua, and Miyako uttered. Even Aqua's normally stoic face shone with amazement. They've probably never seen anything like his car this close and in person. In his rented parking space sat his dark gray sports car, possessing cutting-edge design and features. Well, in this world's standard of cutting-edge, at least, the Batmobile would wipe the floor with his car. But instead of having a more combat-oriented and militaristic look like the Batmobile, he opted for a more subtle, but distinct, luxury aesthetic. Moreover, it even had an integrated defense system and was completely bulletproof, but he'd rather keep that to himself. Satisfaction filled Jason as he looked at their expressions. And it was about to get better. Check this out. Jason tapped an icon on the screen of his custom car key, and the right door unlatched. Producing a near-silent hissing sound, it tilted directly upwards until it was completely open, revealing 4 seats inside the car and the near-futuristic interior design. Instead of buttons, dashboards filled the inside. Although it certainly looked amazing and up to his standards, he wondered if maybe I should have toned it down a bit. Miyako pointed at the car and gulped. How much did this car cost? Ruby and Aqua turned their heads, curious to know the answer as well. That was a good question. Jason held his chin while he narrowed his eyes in thought. He didn't really think about that aspect since Wheatley could just manufacture anything using the chaos energy he absorbed from the Chaos King. It didn't drain that much since the amount drained would be proportional to the complexity and power of the object being produced. If he took into account the custom systems, features, design, and materials, the total cost would be around $590 million. I probably shouldn't tell her that. It looks like she'll faint if I tell her the actual number. He couldn't give a really low number either, since that would just be suspicious. Something that looks like this would cost at least $100,000. Jason walked up close to Miyako and whispered, around 140,000 American dollars or 20 million yen. Miyako gasped. Her brows shot up and her body trembled. What is it? Ruby and Aqua asked. With shaking legs, Miyako walked over to them and held them close before whispering the number Jason gave her. Their eyebrows shot up as well, and they rigidly turned their heads toward him. Jason, are you perhaps a millionaire? Aqua asked. As of currently? No, he wasn't yet. Time for some good old-fashioned bullshit. Jason shook his head with a chuckle. No. And to answer your next most likely question, no, I didn't buy this. A friend of mine gave it to me. Said he didn't want it anymore since he had a better one. That was technically only half true. Wheatley was an actual friend of his, and Wheatley did technically give the car to him. But they don't know that Wheatley's an incredibly mostly intelligent AI that can pretty much make almost anything. You have a friend that just gives away a car like this for free? Asked Ruby in shock and disbelief. Jason nodded. I do. I won't tell you his name since he told me not to do so unless he permits it, but just know that I have quite a few connections in high places. And I only have those connections because of him. I think I'll go now. I'll be late for work soon. Goodbye, kids. Miyako waved goodbye and walked away while she rubbed her forehead. Bye, Miyako-san. Bye, Miyako-san. Aqua and Ruby waved back. Now, who wants to sit at the front? Asked Jason. Ruby excitedly raised her hand. Me. All right, ladies first. Jason gestured for her to enter the car as if he was a butler. Entering the car, Ruby gasped in amazement as she sat on the left front seat and strapped in her seatbelt, touching the sides and looking around the whole car. "You're up, Aqua." Aqua nodded and sat behind Ruby. He was content to just look around and strap on his seatbelt. With them in their seats, Jason followed inside and closed the door. He took a deep breath and immersed himself in the new car smell. Only then did he put on his seatbelt. "Car, activate." Following his command, the car's engine roared to life, and the dashboards turned on. The side mirrors automatically adjusted, and between Jason and Ruby, a dashboard rose. "Amazing," said Ruby. "Also, you can search for songs online on the middle dashboard," said Jason after tapping and checking a few things on the middle dashboard. "Oh," Ruby looked back. "Aqua, you already know what songs I'm gonna play." Aqua smiled in anticipation. "Go ahead." Ruby immediately searched for a Bikomake playlist and tapped play. A.na ta no adara. Sane wab, chu. AI songs, huh? I should have expected it, said Jason. MHM? Mama's songs are the best, right, Aqua? Of course. There's no one else in the industry better than her. Jason revved the engine. A satisfying mechanical roar and whine entered his ears. "Oh yeah, I'm gonna have fun with this baby later." With that thought in mind, Jason sped up and drove off. Chapter 35, Chapter 29, First Job, 2 halves. Outside Ruby and Aqua's preschool, parents and children gawked and stared as a gray sports car drove into the nearby parking spaces. Inside the car, Jason turned to Ruby. "We're here. Do I need to take you guys inside and drop you off?" Aqua nodded wordlessly while Ruby nodded with a smile. "MHM, Miyako-san always drops us off at the school." "All right then. Let's go." After shutting the car's engine with a voice command and getting off, Jason locked the doors with a tap on the car key. Ruby smiled and hummed the tune of AI's song while Aqua stoically walked beside her. As they walked to the kids' preschool, he could see people turning their heads at him and heard the whispers and gossiping of the parents around them as clear as day. "Oh my, that's the most handsome man I've ever seen." "I know, right? I haven't seen him before. Is he the father of those 2 children?" "I don't think so. They don't resemble him at all." Jason had no change in expression as he listened, but it looked like he was right about his theory relating to his new ability to remain unnoticed, even in plain sight. Joe merged his soul with data of multiple people. Batman, Deathstroke, Red Robin, Robin, Orphan, Nightwing, and 2 versions of himself from different universes or timelines. One thing every one of them had in common was their complete mastery of stealth at similar degrees. He also said the merging would trigger qualitative evolutions through the accumulation of compatible information. Knowing that, would it be too far-fetched to guess that because they were all masters of stealth, it resulted in this new ability of his? Jason didn't know for sure if his guess was completely correct, but he wasn't complaining. If he was unnoticeable in plain sight, even when in a crowd and standing at his full size, then how much more effective would it be in other situations? Would his enemies in combat completely miss his presence if they lost sight of him for a mere moment? Or would he be able to just walk into heavily guarded areas in plain sight without issue? That was something he needed to test out. His first attempt at controlling this new ability, which seemed to have succeeded on the night he met Karasuma, involved consciously wanting people to see him. It was clear this ability wasn't linked to his physical control, as no amount of changing his body language, flexing, or relaxing his muscles worked. That meant it was mental or spiritual, similar to what he imagined telekinesis would be like or similar to how he summoned the All Blades. As he thought about the potential uses for this new ability of his, Ruby tugged his hand, breaking his train of thought. They had just reached the drop-off area near the school's entrance and parents around them bid their children goodbye. He looked down at Ruby. What is it? Are you gonna pick us up later?" Jason hummed in thought. "Maybe. I'll call Miyako-san and ask." Her smile disappeared, replaced by a pout of disappointment. "Oh, okay." Seeing this, Jason rubbed the back of his neck and sighed. He hadn't spent that much time with AI's family aside from his frequent hospital visits in the past and sometimes eating a meal at his place. And he certainly enjoyed spending time with them, but he occasionally wondered if getting too close to them was bad. Bad for him, and for them. He understood that, in due time, they would find out more about him, maybe unmasking the reality of his identity as a killer. Then, the carefully constructed guise of the friendly neighbor would vanish like wisps of smoke. Would they still want to talk to him after that? Instead of a smile, would they look at him with fear instead? "Okay, look, if Miyako-san wants to pick you up herself, then there's nothing I can do about it. But what about this?" he said, crouching down to their level. Ruby and Aqua tilted their heads in curiosity. "I'll see if I can negotiate with them about your schedules. And if all goes well, then maybe I can start occasionally picking you guys up after school. Are you two fine with that?" Aqua shrugged. "I have no issues with it." Ruby's smile came back twofold and she eagerly nodded her head. "I'd like that." Smiling, he softly patted their heads. He could sense people staring at him, including the school staff members. "Maybe I should keep my ability on when I go outside. I'm just attracting unnecessary attention." Just as he was about to stand up, Ruby hugged him. "Thanks for dropping us off, Jason." Behind her, Aqua bowed and thanked him as well. "No problem, guys." He returned the hug before turning her around. "Now go. Behave in school, okay? Okay. He watched them reach the door of the school before Ruby suddenly turned around and waved at him with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Oh no, She cupped her mouth with one hand and shouted, "Bye, Papa." Groaning into his hand out of embarrassment, he waved back. The people and staff around them chuckled at his reaction and mistook it as family banter. "I knew it." He is their father, the mother from before gossiped to her friend. "Oh, shush you. They still look nothing alike. He's probably just their stepfather. Okay, I'm out of here." Slipping between the gaps in people's attention and peripheral vision, Jason turned on his ability and hid his presence before eventually reaching his car and driving off. While Jason drove home, he called Miyako-san, who was with AI, and asked if he could occasionally pick Ruby and Aqua up, and they happily agreed. When he got home, he immediately returned to the training space and traveled to an open area next to the arena. "Wheatley, where's all the equipment I sent you schematics of?" he asked as he looked around. Wheatley's voice resounded in his head. "Oops, I completely forgot about them. Sorry about that. They should be there. Now." Instead of an empty space with nothing but a polished floor, there were workout equipment placed a few meters between each other. It was similar to a top-of-the-line home gym. There was a dumbbell rack with weights ranging from 10 metric tons, about 22,000 pounds, to 30 metric tons, about 67,000 pounds, and various equipment. The most he could currently lift with one arm was a 15 metric tons dumbbell, and each jump to the next metric ton was going to take time, even with his vastly improved recovery rate and regeneration thanks to Deathstroke. And yet, as Jason took off his shirt, he revealed many faint scars of varying sizes. Bullet wounds, slash wounds, puncture wounds, and more. When he first saw them, he asked Wheatley why he still had scars when they should be gone. The answer he received surprised him. They were scars that manifested because of his and his other selves' pain and suffering, enhanced by the soul merging. And to make matters worse, Wheatley said they were permanent. No matter how much he regenerated, his scars would remain. But he could accept it. The only reason it slightly bothered Jason was because it meant he'd be constantly reminded of what he suffered under the hands of the Joker. As if he didn't already have the memories of the damn beatings in his head. Well, at least his face didn't have scars. "Alright, let's see here." He walked up to a metal rack for bench presses and other workouts that used a barbell. Picking up 6 weight plates, he added them to the bar. The bar itself weighed 5 metric tons and with the added plates, it totaled to 25. Laying down on the bench and positioning his eyes parallel to the bar, Jason gripped it before slowly pushing it up. His muscles tensed because of the weight. Maintaining his breath, he continued doing bench presses, perfectly maintaining a slow pace with proper control and muscle activation. When he was properly warmed up, he added 2 smaller plates, making the total weight 27 metric tons. It was the most he could lift in a bench press position. For hours, he tested the limits of his strength, performing workouts with almost no breaks in between, since his body could recover. By the end of it, he didn't sweat, but his entire body was certainly sore. Satisfaction filled him as he drank a gallon of protein shake. He had already finished 2 and placed them on the metal table next to him. While he knew he was much stronger than before, and was still growing because of the energy inside him, he didn't think the difference would be this big. Before, he could lift at least 5 tons, punch through a submarine's hull, and even once held a falling roof above his head to let civilians escape. "I really have to thank Joe the next time I see him," he muttered to himself. After Wheatley freshened him up, he put on his suit and put the helmet on the table in front of the TV. Jason left the training space and checked the online databases and channels to see if he could find any information about what caused the moon to blow up. Jin jumped next to him on the couch, seemingly curious about what he was doing. He greeted Jin and idly rubbed the pup's head with his left hand. It seemed the world's leaders were under some stress because of a new octopus-like creature. An image of the creature displayed on his laptop's monitor. Donning a black academic dress and a small black squarish mortarboard, the creature stood 3 meters tall. It possessed long yellow tentacles and a large round head with beady eyes. Huh, that's interesting. An anomaly, huh? It certainly seems friendly. Just look at that big smile on its bulbous head. He'd seen stranger things, but it was a new species, as far as he knew. Ruby might even be right. The creature certainly looked like an alien. Jason dug deeper, reading the reports and the government's profile on it. Whatever the creature was, it took responsibility for the moon's destruction and threatened to end the world in March. But as Jason read further down, his confusion slowly grew. The octopus threatened to end the Earth in 1 year, but not before teaching Class 3E of Kunujijayaka Junior High School, one of the top schools found in Tokyo. Come to think of it, most of the schools in Japan are starting soon. Then there was the list of its known capabilities. Flight with a top speed of Mach 20 being the most impressive. The country's military already tried to eliminate it with their fighter jets. But it said in the report that it simply cleaned and polished the jets before racing ahead and escaping them. This is not what I expected. Jason held his chin in thought, his other hand still petting Jin. Why? Is it that strange? Think about it like this. You're a being that possesses the power to reduce the moon into a crescent and move 20 times the speed of sound. What would you do? Take over the world. Probably. I certainly know many of my past enemies would do something on a similar, if not larger, scale. The Joker would cause unimaginable destruction and chaos if he had that much power. Jason heavily frowned at the scenario he thought of. If there were an infinite amount of Jokers in the Omniverse, was there a Joker with that much power? It was a terrifying thought, and something he stopped entertaining. The report had limited info. They've likely put the most important information on physical documents and stored it in secure databases with limited online access. For now, he'll scout the creature and head to the school himself. If this creature truly did plan to destroy the moon, he'll need all the information he can get and create a plan to eliminate it. Frowning, Jason stored the laptop in his ring, wore a domino mask, and put on the helmet. He touched its side and the helmet's plates mechanically shifted, securing itself and locking in place. The domino mask was unnecessary, but it had turned into a habit of his to wear it beneath the helmet. "Hey Jin," Jason called out, making Jin look up. "Want to come with me on one of my patrols?" Jin stood up with his tail wagging and barked excitedly. He leapt at Jason. Jason caught Jin in his arms and chuckled. "Looks like that's a yes. Hey, have you ever killed criminals before?" On a mountain 1 kilometer away from Kunujajayaka Junior High's main building was the location of Class 3E. Karasuma sat in the building's staff office. It had been a hectic month since he met Deathstroke. Since then, he had been reassigned to a different assignment his superiors had prioritized: the assassination of the creature who destroyed most of the moon. Allegedly, at least. There were behind-the-scenes activities he was aware of, but was not informed about. Since the start of his reassignment, he had become the PE teacher for Class 3E and was currently working with the class to assassinate Koro-sensei, their teacher. The same teacher who also planned on destroying the moon in the middle of March. There had been times where a few of the students had managed to take out a tentacle or two. Most notably, Karma Akabane, a talented student with a penchant for violence according to his student report. Regardless, none of them have come close to assassinating the octopus. The government had even recruited outside help, hiring Irina Jelevic. She was a professional hitman with a reputable history of successfully assassinating high-profile targets using her beauty and skills. Unfortunately, her assassination failed miserably. She stayed after her failed attempt and continued teaching the class what she knew. Now, Karasuma folded his hands together as he contemplated whether to go with this decision. His superiors had found his report on Deathstroke and were interested in hiring him. Their interest peaked after reading the report on what the man had accomplished in Tokyo, including Karasuma's confrontation with him. They were running out of options, and desperation had convinced them hiring an unknown mercenary was an excellent decision. Yet that was exactly why he was hesitating. Irina was at least normal in the sense that she did not seem superhuman. But based on his experience, Deathstroke was clearly anything but normal, and the children's safety was his priority. He didn't think anyone would be safe around that man. Finally giving up, Karasuma took a calming breath and contacted the number given to him by Deathstroke. It only took a second before he answered. "Karasuma." "What a surprise," Deathstroke said calmly. "The government is interested in hiring you for an assignment." Karasuma stood up and looked out the window, watching the students play sports. "Let me guess. You're all desperate and want me to kill the creature that destroyed the moon, the one also teaching Kunujajayaka High's Class 3E. Karasuma's eyes widened in surprise before a frown marred his face. "That's classified information. Not for me," Deathstroke answered cryptically. "Now, let's schedule a meeting. Discuss the details. After all, the world is running out of time." Chapter 36, Anomaly Database Entry Koro-sensei. Subject, Koro-sensei. Date, April XX, 20XX. Classification, Unknown Entity. Subject Profile, Koro-sensei is an enigmatic and highly intelligent being with a unique appearance, resembling a yellow, octopus-like creature. He first emerged as the homeroom teacher for Class 3E at Kunujajayaka Junior High School. Despite his unconventional appearance, Koro-sensei possesses incredible abilities, such as superhuman speed, strength, and the power to move at Mach 20. Known information. Weakness, a particular form of anti-sensei material that can harm him has been discovered. Koro-sensei refers to this material as anti-sensei BB bullets. It is one of the few ways to hurt him physically. Teaching method. Koro-sensei is an unorthodox educator who uses unconventional and engaging teaching methods to help students excel in various subjects. His unique approach has proven to be effective, and he actively encourages Class 3E to take part in assassination attempts as a means of improving their combat skills and focus. Personality. Despite being the target of the students' assassination attempts, Koro-sensei maintains a positive and caring demeanor. I don't know why, but he genuinely cares for his students' well-being and is committed to helping them grow not only academically but also emotionally. Past, Koro-sensei's origins and true intentions remain shrouded in mystery. He claims to be responsible for the destruction of 70% of the moon's surface. However, his motives for teaching Class 3E is still unknown. Superhuman abilities. Koro-sensei's physical abilities surpass those of ordinary humans. He possesses superspeed and can traverse vast distances in an instant, making him seemingly impossible to apprehend. Additionally, he can regenerate from most injuries at a remarkable rate. Summary of events. Koro-sensei has agreed to a pact with the Japanese government, granting Class 3A the chance to assassinate him before the end of the academic year. If successful, the world will be saved from his apocalyptic plans. However, if they fail, he will destroy Earth. Additional notes. As of this report, I have been operating with the limited information provided by my personal observations. I have not used any form of remote technology to get more information. My instinct is telling me Koro-sensei can spot any drone I send. His true intentions and capabilities may go beyond the knowledge currently available to me. That will likely change soon. They've hired an assassin, but she failed. According to the messages I intercepted, they'll contact me soon. My investigation is ongoing, and I will continue to gather intelligence and assess any potential threats he may pose. End of data entry. Chapter 37, Chapter 30, Introductions. Within the wooden classroom of Class 3E, the students whispered among themselves. Nakamura, a girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, frowned in confusion. Another new teacher? It's only been a few days since Bitch-sensei got here. Since he's here, he's probably going to try to assassinate Koro-sensei, added Karahashi, an orange-haired female student with green eyes. Damn, he looks intimidating. Just look at how massive he is, commented Okajima, a male student with a buzz cut. Hey, you guys think that eye patch is real? Jason stood with his Deathstroke disguise at the front of the class with Karasuma, Irina, and Koro-sensei standing nearby. He donned a form-fitting, black turtleneck under a tailored, cream-colored blazer with matching dress slacks and shoes. He and Karasuma ironed out the details of their contract yesterday, and if he were to successfully assassinate Koro-sensei, he would get the 10 billion yen or $70 million reward. Jason even gave them his real name, Slade Wilson, but not before telling them they won't find anything more than what he wanted them to know. After that, he fished Karasuma for answers to the questions he had. Jason had no issues spying on Koro-sensei and Karasuma from up close with his new stealth ability, compounded with his own mastery of stealth. But despite his best efforts, he could only gather limited information from overhearing conversations and observing the situation himself. There were still so many puzzle pieces he was missing. Why did Koro-sensei decide to teach Class 3E? He said he was born and raised on Earth, but that meant he was human before turning into his current form. If so, what was his human identity and what caused his transformation? A science experiment gone wrong? With some deep investigation, he found out a few interesting pieces of information. At that thought, Jason took a quick glance at Kaed Kaino, a petite female student with dyed green hair. Unfortunately, there were roadblocks that prevented him from finding out more. For now, his best way of gaining information was being in proximity to Koro-sensei and the class. In the worst-case scenario of Koro-sensei having evil intentions, he'll initiate the contingency plan he'd developed already. But Jason didn't want it to come to that because, based on what he'd seen so far, the students truly were improving under his teaching. And Koro-sensei also genuinely seemed to care about them. Karasuma loudly cleared his throat, silencing the class and gaining their full attention. Allow me to introduce you to your new science teacher. Taking that as his cue, Jason stepped forward and introduced himself. My name is Slade Wilson, but you can simply call me Will. I understand that having another teacher joining us so soon is unusual, but there's a good reason for it. Wilson-san came highly recommended, and he offers a wealth of expertise and scientific knowledge we thought would be helpful in your education. Karasuma turned to Koro-sensei. Similar to last time, he will take over some of your science lessons. Do you have any objections? Koro-sensei gave a warm and encouraging smile. Oh, no objections at all. I'm always open to new opportunities for my dear students' education. Besides, having Wilson-san share his experience and knowledge sounds like a delightful addition to their learning. After all, learning is a journey, and the more minds to inspire, the merrier. So, Wilson-sensei, welcome aboard. Koro-sensei offered his right tentacle with 2 fingertips for a handshake. Jason raised an eyebrow before shaking it with his hand. Never thought I'd ever shake hands with an octopus. Nurahuhu, there is always a first time for even the most bizarre of events. Jason looked up at Koro-sensei and smiled in response, his hand still grasping the tentacle. I guess so. Hey, do you mind if I tested something out? And what do you wish to put to the test? Inquired Koro-sensei with genuine curiosity, his beady white eyes gleaming with anticipation. This. Jason tightened his grip, holding it with literal metric tons of force, and held on when he felt Koro-sensei instantly trying to back away. It was like trying to grab a slimy eel, but with the right application of force, it wasn't an issue. His head is too far. I'll just take out his tentacle. Jason pulled out the hand tucked in his pocket, revealing the green, anti-sensei rubber knife he had hidden. Holding the knife blade up, his arm struck the tentacle like a viper, accelerating from 0 to near maximum speed. It cut through the tentacle like a hot knife through butter, creating a straight cut down the middle. The tentacle fell to the ground and melted while emitting some type of smoke. Immediately after, Koro-sensei quickly backed away at an incredible speed. Jason pretended he wasn't able to follow Koro-sensei's movements, but it would be laughably easy to do. Regenerating his tentacle, Koro-sensei now looked at him with extreme caution. He didn't even need Cassandra's body language reading to know that the octopus was wondering about what had just happened. So I can still hit him as long as I hold him down and strike fast. He, surprisingly, lacks the strength to pull away from my grip. Jason showed a friendly smile. I look forward to working with you, Koro-sensei. Let's keep testing the waters, shall we? Nagisa Shiota stared in shock with wide eyes. In one moment, Will-sensei and Koro-sensei were shaking hands, but in less than a blink of an eye, Koro-sensei's tentacle had suddenly exploded. Then they realized Will-sensei used an anti-sensei knife, but exactly when did he take it out? And how did he manage to hit Koro-sensei? There was a moment of silence before his classmates exploded into a commotion, feeling just as shocked as him. HOH. He got Koro-sensei's tentacle with such a straightforward approach? I'm impressed. Karma held his chin with a smile on his face. Wow, I didn't even see his arm move at all. Did you see it, Nagisa? Kaed asked with excitement in her eyes. Nagisa shook his head in a daze. His gaze shifted back and forth between Will-sensei and Koro-sensei. Will-sensei put the knife on the teacher's table while Koro-sensei stared at him with his back to the wall. The extreme caution with which Koro-sensei looked at Will-sensei was undeniable. Drops of sweat could be seen on his head and his smile had turned into a straight line. It was Nagisa's first time seeing Koro-sensei that startled from having a tentacle get taken out. Not even what karma did in the past got him that shaken. Nagisa's gaze settled on Will-sensei. He tried to comprehend how the man hit Koro-sensei's tentacle in such a direct manner when not even Karma, Bitch-sensei, or Karasuma-sensei could. They were the three most combat-capable people in the class, as far as he knew, but it looked like he should probably add Will-sensei to the top of the list. Just who is our new teacher? Karasuma stared at his table in thought. He and Irina left while Wilson-san stayed behind, wanting to observe the class for a moment. Koro-sensei had a slightly tense face when he heard that. Karasuma, just who the hell is the new guy? Irina asked, slamming her hands on her table. Karasuma opened his mouth, but closed it again as he debated on what to tell her. She growled in annoyance at his silence. Come on, tell me. He can't just be some run-of-the-mill assassin? For God's sake, he took out one of the pervert's tentacles with a knife, something neither of us have managed to. The man is an assassin, just like you, but it would be more accurate to call him a vigilante, Karasuma interrupted with his hands interlocking, covering his lower face. The Ministry of Defense first got word of him when Tokyo's law enforcement received reports of a long string of murders from an anonymous source. Murderers, infamous drug dealers, rapists, and pedophiles. He left none of them alive. She furrowed her brows. That's quite the list. He definitely sounds like a vigilante based on what you're saying. So, how many did he kill? Karasuma paused for a moment as he remembered the number. He killed 60 people in 48 hours all across Tokyo, with more than double left alive, but suffering from crippling injuries. Irina's eyes widened in shock. But how is that possible? Such a high kill count in that amount of time is difficult to achieve, even for assassins like my mentor. Karasuma shook his head. We don't know how either. What we do know is that he's capable of murdering people with exceptional efficiency, with only 1 or 2 people being able to get a glimpse of him. In summary, he's dangerous. Extremely dangerous. She raised an eyebrow at his severe tone. You sound as if you've experienced being his target. Hearing her words, Karasuma frowned, having been reminded of his experience. That's because you're right. Mostly. Oh, how did it go? She asked, her curiosity piqued. She sat down in her chair to get more comfortable. The man somehow snuck past all forms of security in the police headquarters and got into my office. He even knew about me, despite the fact that any information pertaining to me should have been well guarded by the government. Karasuma held his throat and vividly recalled the cold touch of Deathstroke's blade. Take this as advice based on experience. Do not give him a reason to kill you. He can get behind you and take your life in a literal blink of an eye, even when he's on the opposite side of the room. What frightens me the most is that we don't know his full capabilities. As far as I know, what he showed me could have just been a small showcase of what he could do. I see. He's certainly a frightening man. A worried frown settled on Irina's face. I understand hiring me, but don't you think having someone like him around the students is rather reckless? I know, but my superiors are running out of options. The only reason we were able to get in contact with you was due to your mentor. Japan doesn't have any connections to assassins aside from him, so locating one inside our country was a godsend to them. And I doubt he'll be leaving anytime soon after what he did earlier. I have to report it and they'll know he's capable, which means they're likely to extend his stay indefinitely. Karasuma nodded in agreement. Just as the conversation finished, the bell rang, signaling the start of PE, his subject. Karasuma stood up and straightened his tie in preparation. They heard a powerful gust of wind before the door to the teacher's office slid open. The yellow octopus entered the room and seemed to be back to his casual, smiling self. Another day of productive learning for my students. I'm off to class, Karasuma said as he walked past Koro-sensei. Perhaps with Deathstroke's help they could finally assassinate the octopus once and for all. Third-person POV. Watching the students train on the field shouting and grunting from the top of a grassy slope, Jason felt nostalgic. Memories of training in the Batcave shuffled in his mind like a compilation of short movies clips. Of course, it wasn't like the training Class 3E was doing. Bruce's training was far more intense and rigorous. Acrobatics, stealth, martial arts, science, psychology, criminology, escapology, the works. As embarrassing as it was to admit, the training had made him let a tear out once or twice. Bruce was absolutely brutal and wouldn't be satisfied until you applied 100% of your effort. And the older he got, the more Bruce would ramp up the difficulty. Then again, it was all a necessity if he wanted to keep up with Batman on the streets of Gotham, and the training served him well even until now. Ironically, though, now it was his turn to be the teacher. Hey, teach. Not interested in joining in. A voice chimed from his left. It was Karma Akabane, a talented and quick-witted student, and the first one to damage Koro-sensei with clever ploys until the octopus adapted. He also had the tendency to skip classes and had a record of violence. A victim of Kunujajayaka's system that heavily favored excelling students to the point that they'd ignore bullying. Akabane-san, was it? What about you? Jason crossed his arms, continuing to observe. Having taken off his blazer, Karasuma deflected and dodged knife blows from 2 students skillfully. Shouldn't you be joining in on the training? Karma had a smile on his face as he lazily watched, sitting on the grassy slope. But despite his apparent laziness, Jason could tell the boy was committing Karasuma's movements to memory. Nah, it's a lot more enjoyable when you watch from the sidelines, Karma replied. Besides, I wanted to know how you took out one of Koro-sensei's tentacles. No one has managed to do it the way you did. He'd always dodge out of the way before you can even touch him. That's something I'll keep to myself. Wouldn't want you kids to swipe that 10 billion yen bounty from me using my own strategy, now would I? Karma shrugged, a bit disappointed. That's fair. But to cut his tentacle that fast, you must be pretty strong. Jason shrugged, playing down his abilities. I've had some good training. Karma raised an eyebrow at him, seemingly intrigued. Good training, huh? Mind giving me a couple of pointers? I don't mind teaching you a few things, but I'm not your PE teacher, so it's not my decision to make. Don't worry. I'll take care of that. Yosh. Karma stood up, patting the grass of his pants, and headed towards Karasuma, with Jason just behind him. Oh I, Karma called out while cupping a hand to his mouth. Karasuma, Mahara, and ISEKAI stopped their spar. They put down their knives and looked at the approaching Karma. What is it? Asked Karasuma as he turned towards Karma. Just wondering if you'd let me and Will Sensei have a little spar. Karma pointed a thumb behind him. He said he wouldn't mind giving me some pointers. Karasuma hummed in thought and stared at Jason for a moment before nodding. All right. He turned back to Jason with a look of warning in his eyes. Go easy on them. Raising an eyebrow in response, Jason wondered if he should have given Karasuma a different impression of him. He had no intention of getting into a serious fight with a kid. An excited glint shone in Karma's eyes after realizing the implications and subtext in his words. Hey, dude. You sure you want to take on the teacher who took out Koro-sensei's tentacle during their first time meeting? Mahara asked, aiming a skeptical look at Karma. He's a literal tank. Karma's smile didn't falter as he walked back. Relax. We're just going to spar. Plus, at least you guys get to see what the new teacher is made of. Jason took off his blazer and held it up to ISEKAI. Could you hold this for me? Sure, Will Sensei. ISEKAI nodded and held the blazer. It looked comically huge in his arms. Damn, what size are his clothes? He muttered to himself. Thanks. After hearing that Karma was going to spar their new teacher, the students stopped their own spars in favor of watching Karma's. They were no doubt wondering about their new teacher's fighting capabilities. And after seeing him cut Koro-sensei's tentacle, they had high expectations. Are you sure you're in a good condition to fight with only one eye, Sensei? Karma asked while he performed arm stretches. You don't have to worry about me. Worry about yourself, answered Jason. If you say so. But would you care for a wager, Sensei? Karma moved on to leg stretches. If I hit you once in under a minute, you tell us how you got Koro-sensei's tentacle. And what will you be doing if you don't hit me? Replied Jason. I won't skip school next month, Karma answered, grinning. An unfair wager, huh, thought Jason. Jason snorted in amusement, tying his neck-length white hair into a short ponytail. All right, I accept. But I'll make it easier for you. I'll give you 2 minutes. And even if you're only able to graze my hair or brush my clothes, you win, so don't be afraid to go all out. When they heard that, the surrounding crowd of students erupted in excited and worried whispers. Karasuma silently observed the fight with crossed arms. Back in the school building, Irina and Koro-sensei watched from the hallway. Karma's grin widened. He always wanted the chance to go all out. Deal. Great. The fight starts now, Jason said nonchalantly as he put his hands in his pockets, confusing everyone. Taking his opportunity, Karma dashed forward, closing the distance quickly. He knew Will Sensei was underestimating him, so he thought he could use that to his advantage. You're fast. Jason sidestepped to the left, dodging a right cross. But you telegraph your moves, he continued, leaning back just enough to dodge Karma's left hook. Karma clicked his tongue, backing away for a moment before rushing in once more. Jason sidestepped another hook. Rotate your hips just a bit more when you do that. He ducked beneath a high side kick. Decrease the wind-up of your kick and use your arms to build momentum. Karasuma's eyebrows knit together as he observed the spar. He's dodging each blow exceptionally well while using the least amount of movement necessary. From our perspective, it looks like Karma-kun is getting quite close to hitting him, but that's just an illusion. Deathstroke's not backing away, but neither is he getting closer. He's always maintaining the same distance between them. He's doing all of it with restrained arms and while he's giving advice, which should have messed with his sense of balance and split his concentration. That's not even considering his lack of depth perception. Karasuma couldn't help but have respect for Deathstroke's fighting skill. Even I would have a hard time evading that in his condition. Their spar received everyone's rapt attention. Will Sensei especially. He moved with such grace and ease that they were mesmerized by him. Compared to him, Karma's movements looked sloppy. Midway through, Karma tried going for grabs instead. Yet not even that strategy worked. As the fight dragged on, Karma began to lose stamina. Added to his mounting impatience and frustration, it only made his blows easier to evade. Then, everyone's eyebrows soared and some of their jaws dropped when Slade suddenly crouched and leaned back from a roundhouse kick until his back was parallel to the ground. Karma's leg was a mere centimeter away from his nose as it passed. When Jason straightened back, he gave Karma a bored stare. Time's up, kid. You lose. There was a moment of silence before they started shouting. You did your best, Karma. Nagisa and his classmates cheered. Breathing heavily with sweat pouring down his temple and drenching his clothes, Karma sat down on the ground with a tired smile. A flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes. I couldn't even touch you. Jason kneeled and gave him an encouraging smile. You were pretty good, kid. If it was anyone else aside from your octopus teacher you'd have won. Practice on your form and fix your habit of telegraphing your moves if you want to get to the next level. We'll have a rematch when you get better. But since I won, that means no skipping school next month. Are we clear? Karma merely closed his eyes and subtly nodded in confirmation. I won't forget, teach. If you don't mind, I'm taking a break. He saluted and laid down on the ground. Jason snorted in amusement. He meant what he said to Karma. The kid was talented and applied his advice in the middle of the spar, which was easier said than done. If nurtured well, the kid could become a great fighter. Just as Jason stood up, he was instantly swarmed by the class. That was amazing, Will-sensei. How did you move like that? Can you teach us your moves? Are you single? As Jason patiently answered questions from them, he only had one thought. Teaching these kids might not be so bad. After all, Chapter 38, Chapter 31, Assembly. All of Class 3E students' focus was on Jason. There was something about his voice and the way he talked that just grabbed their attention. Approaching this problem with this formula is advisable when the object is constantly. Jason's clear voice resonated in the classroom as he taught, the chalk in his hand gliding over the board while he explained the basics of motion, force, and Newton's laws. It's been a day since he first started teaching and there were no problems so far. While he wouldn't call himself an excellent teacher, he knew how to package information and deliver it to the students in the most understandable way possible. Any questions the students had were answered based on how they learned best, whether that be visually, through hearing, or through demonstrations. The class seemed to like demonstrations the most, like when he explained the forces involved in a bullet's arc by shooting one of the anti-sensei pistols and having them do simple calculations of the drop. It solidified their understanding of the topic and made it easier to visualize other problems. Just as he was about to continue on to a new topic, the campus bell rang through the speakers, signifying the start of their lunch break. Jason put down the chalk before dusting his hands off. All right. That'll be the end of today's lesson. The octopus will take over from here. Class dismissed. The students let out small cheers and groans before ISEKAI, the class unofficial leader, stood at the front of the room. He faced his classmates with an easygoing smile. Everyone remembers about the assembly, right? Let's all hurry and head to the main campus. Third-person POV. Jason knew about the assembly since yesterday and was already waiting at the main campus gate by the time everyone else began making their way down the mountain. He could hear their footsteps and words all the way from his location. While going down, he took care of the dangerous hazards that could have hurt the students along the way, such as snakes, wasps, a random bear that he knocked out with a punch and a boulder that could have crushed someone. The amount of danger on the mountain trail to the main campus fueled his annoyance towards the school for their lack of safety precautions. They could have at least made the trip safer using the money they got from all their sponsors, and most recently, the Ministry of Defense paying their principal millions of yen as hush money. Kunujajayaka and their principal's obvious discrimination against the end class were appalling to him, but there wasn't much he could do about it. While he mulled over his thoughts, the students and teachers except for Koro-sensei arrived. We're finally here. Okajima cheered with tired breaths as he ran past the open gate. He hugged and kissed the ground with tears in his eyes. I never want to use that route again. And whoever said the bridge was a shortcut is a damn liar. There weren't any dangerous animals like last time. Did you guys notice? Asked Hinata Okano, a female student with short brown hair. I noticed that too. I expected to find some snakes or something else along the way, answered Manami Okuda, a female student with braided hair and glasses. She was relieved to not encounter any of those animals like last time. Most of the class shared the same sentiment and used their brief moment of respite to take a break. Many of them sat down while some were completely resting on their backs. We made it, said ISEKAI as he looked back at the class with sympathy. The trek wasn't difficult for him because he was an active guy, but he couldn't say the same for most of the class. Yeah, somehow replied Mahara with slightly winded breaths. He was in the same boat as ISEKAI. Come on, guys, ISEKAI exclaimed. Let's hurry and line up. Hearing this, everyone sighed. Okay, wait, has anyone seen Will-sensei? Nope. They made their way to the gymnasium while helping some of their friends stand up. Jason looked down and spotted an exhausted Irina on her hands and knees, holding her hand out to the students. Wait for me. She looks like she's about to drop. Jason snorted his nose in amusement. Shaking his head, Jason stepped off the top of the metal gate and silently landed behind her. Can't handle a short walk down the mountain? Jason asked tauntingly. Irina jumped in surprise before comprehending the words said to her and growling in response. Turning her head back to look at Jason, she shouted, let's see you try running down a mountain wearing heels. Jason snorted once more and walked towards her. Not in a million years, he said in Serbian as he pulled her up by the back of her suit. Here's my advice. Improve your fitness and stamina more. Even if you're an assassin that specializes in espionage, there will be times where you'll need your body in good shape. I don't need your advice, she said in disregard before blinking in surprise. Wait, you know Serbian? Jason shrugged. I do. I know at least 20 languages. Alors, connaissez-vous le français? Then, do you know French? Asked Irina. He nodded. Je peux parler français. C'est l'un des premiers que j'ai appris. I can speak French. It's one of the first ones I learned. Deutsch? German. He nodded again. Ouch, das noch. That too. Irina couldn't hide her surprise. I thought you only knew English and Japanese. I traveled all over the world to train, and learning different languages became a necessity, said Jason as he walked past her. Where's the octopus? Left behind. Good riddance, if you ask me. Back at the E-class campus, Koro-sensei's gray-colored face stared at the blue sky with a blank expression. He spoke in a dull monotone. I'm an outcast, all alone. Shunned sensei. Jason snickered at that image. All right, then. I'm going ahead. Don't stay back for too long. Wait. Irina held a hand out as she fixed her hair, but Jason simply ignored her and continued walking. Damn you. See you inside, Miss Jelabich. Jason taunted, using the same nickname the students gave her. It's pronounced Vic, Vish, goddammit. Wait for me. Inside the gymnasium, all of Kunujajaya's classes lined up with the E-class on the rightmost side. Even with all the classes gathered, there was still a substantial amount of space. Kunujajayaka spent millions of yen to construct this state-of-the-art gym. The school dean smiled while he gave his speech at the podium. In short, you are the cream of the crop, the nation's chosen elite? Your school dean, can vouch for that. His smile turned into a sneer as he looked down at E-class and continued in a mocking tone, but if you're not careful, you can wind up as worthless as you know who. Every other class exploded in laughter, aiming the same sneers at the E-class. Most of the class looked down because of shame or embarrassment or both. They were the end class, so the only thing they could do was swallow all their grievances and duck their heads. Now, the balding school dean said in a faux apologetic voice, we mustn't laugh at their expense. I suppose my comment was out of line. Hey, Nagisa, where's Karma? In a low voice, asked Sosuke Shuguya, a relatively tall male student with long, light gray hair. Nagisa looked to the side. Playing hooky. Just him. He knows he'll get punished for skipping assembly, but he says he doesn't care, Nagisa recounted as he wore a wry smile. It's times like this I wish I were a student bad boy. I hear ya, Shuguya agreed, sharing the same sentiment. Karma had good grades, even if he skipped every other class. The school dean left the podium, and the speakers echoed with an announcement. Next, we'll have an address by the student council. Please have the speakers begin their preparation. Meanwhile, Karasuma walked to the right of the E-class, introducing himself to a female main campus teacher who looked at him with blushing cheeks. The students from the other classes noticed him and began to murmur. Who is that teacher? He's so stylish and cool. With one of their teachers nearby, the E-class grew more comfortable. As I work on a separate campus, I thought I'd use this opportunity to say hello, Karasuma explained to the blushing teacher. Okay, replied the teacher, not able to come up with a more complicated statement since she was too busy blushing. Hey, said Karahashi as she held up an object in her hands to show Rio. Check it out. Oh, Rio pulled hers out as well. Karasuma turned in their direction, curious about the objects in their hands. GHK. Karasuma's face strained, realizing they were holding up their knife sheaths. Noticing their teacher's attention, Rio and Karahashi held her sheath up in his direction. Oh, Karasuma-sensei. Look. Karahashi smiled, not noticing Karasuma's strained expression. We decorated our knife sheaths. Cute, huh, added Rio. Karasuma rushed in their direction and covered their knife sheaths before anyone could see them. Nervous beads of sweat poured down his face as he muttered in a tense voice, cuteness is all well and good, but don't pull them out in public. We absolutely cannot let the other classes find out about the assassination. Oh okay. More of the students from the other classes looked over and grew curious. Who's that guy? An E-class teacher. They seem to get along pretty well. I'm kinda jealous, commented a female student. All the guys and teachers in our class are butt ugly. The guys who overheard her felt a sudden case of depression. But it did not depress them for long as the gasps of amazement around them drew their attention to the two people who just entered. Irina, dressed in a form-fitting white suit and matching pencil skirt, drew gasps of admiration and blushing looks from all the students and teachers. The sway of her hips and hair mesmerized those who dared to look. Who's that hot-ass white chick? In contrast to Irina, Jason, who had the appearance of an incredibly muscular giant with white hair and an eye patch, attracted looks of fear and awe. He towered over everyone in the building, and not a single person came close to his height. Jason remembered Wheatley commenting he got taller by another inch, adding more to his ridiculous size. That dude looks scary as hell. Tomohito Sujino, a male student of E-class with short black hair, sweat dropped at the other class's reactions. Bitch sensei was ready to drop just about a minute ago, too. Nagisa's lips slightly turned up as he tried to comprehend how someone could recover in such a way so quickly. Vanity's in her veins, all right. Are they E-class teachers too? Commented an A-class student. That's kinda cool. Irina stood between Karasuma and Jason, who had his arms crossed. What are you doing here? Karasuma asked Irina while looking ahead. Don't give me that. I'm their teacher too, replied Irina. So you do consider yourself a teacher. Plus, I wanted to check out the other students, she continued, noticing a pair of boys leering at her. She laid her hands on her hips. Hardly worth the trip. Her eyes widened as she remembered to ask Nagisa questions about the pervert's weaknesses. Oh yeah. Jason watched her walk towards Nagisa before looking at Karasuma. She's going to start a ruckus by demanding questions from Nagisa. Not gonna stop her. Karasuma's eyes furrowed, and he watched as the same scenario Jason described occurred. How the hell? Just as Irina started smothering Nagisa with her chest, Karasuma grabbed her hair and pulled her away. Ow, that hurts. The students watching furrowed their brows in confusion and anger. What the hell? The end class isn't supposed to have fun. On the podium, the student council member with green hair and glasses cleared his throat. Attention, please. The student council events are explained on the handouts you've just been given. Huh? What? Okajima looked down and around him, not seeing any handouts for their class. He whispered to Okano, where are ours? Okano shook her head and crossed her fingers into an X. ISEKAI held his hand up. Excuse me, sir. E-class didn't get any handouts. The student council member looked at ISEKAI with obvious disdain. Oh, you didn't get any? How strange. He continued in a fake apologetic tone like the school dean had before. I'm sorry. Seems like we forgot to make enough copies for you? I guess you'll just have to memorize the whole thing before you leave. The surrounding students erupted in mocking laughter once again. But hey, you and your classmates could stand to sharpen your memorization skill, right? He said. What the hell? Irina uttered in slight anger. Could he be any more sadistic? Nagisa and the others maintained a stoic face, but shame and a feeling of inferiority gnawed at them within. Jason's jaw clenched in anger at the discrimination he was seeing, but surprise caught him when he sensed the powerful presence of Koro-sensei approaching at speeds past Mach 1. A sudden gust of wind and a sheet of paper in every student of E-class hands accompanied Koro-sensei's arrival. Jason pretended he was as the same as everyone else and couldn't see the creature moving at blistering speeds in front of him. But it still baffled him how something so fast can move at that speed without breaking the sound barrier. No one except everyone involved in the assassination even noticed the new sheets of paper and the sudden gust of wind. Such speed. ISEKAI-kun, Koro-sensei called out, and ISEKAI followed his voice to the right. Irina and Karasuma turned to Koro-sensei in shock at his sudden appearance. What are you? Oh, there you go. Koro-sensei ignored Karasuma while he twirled a pen on his tentacle tip. He also changed the color of his skin to match a human's and added a black wig along with a fake nose. Now, does everyone have a handwritten copy? Yes, sir. ISEKAI nodded with a smile. He raised his hand to the student council member once again. Oh, we got our handouts. Please continue. What? And no way? How? The student council member stared at them in complete confusion. Hey, now, who killed our fun? Ahem. Let us continue. While the E-class looked at their papers with smiles on their faces, Karasuma laid a hand on his hip as he furiously berated Koro-sensei. I explicitly told you not to show yourself to the rest of the school? Your very existence is a state secret, you know. Koro-sensei wriggled his long and wrapped up arms around with a carefree smile. Oh, come on. My disguise is flawless. No one will ever know. Nagisa dryly smiled. He must have been lonely. Sujino shared the same smile. Can't blame him, I guess. The other class's students then watched in bewilderment as the blonde hottie attempted to hit the new wiggly teacher with a knife before the cool guy locked her arm and took her away. Ow, that hurts. Mahara smiled as the class bursted into chuckles and laughter. That's bitch sensei for you. We're going on ahead, Nagisa, said Sujino as he and Kayano headed back up the mountain. Irina had already started climbing up the mountain, wanting to get back up and rest before anything else. Nagisa nodded as he put in some money inside a vending machine and selected his drink. Okay, I'll catch up with you guys in a minute. The juice box dropped at the bottom with a dull clang. Nagisa crouched and opened the lid to grab it. Hey, Nagisa, called out a familiar voice. He looked to his left and recognized the two, Nobuta Tanaka and Chosuke Takeda, two students who often bullied him whenever they got the chance. They looked at him with sneers on their faces. Don't you think you guys are getting a bit too big for your britches? Asked Tanaka. Huh, said Nagisa as he stood up, holding his drink. Logan during the assembly and stuff. How about learning some respect? Tanaka continued. Takeda added with his nasal voice, you E-class losers should just keep your heads down where they belong. What with your crappy lives weighing you down and all, said Nobuta. Nagisa could only stare at them with a confused look. The way they just approached him, started complaining, and talking down at him and his class was too abrupt. Behind Nagisa, Karasuma, Jason, and Koro-sensei exited the gymnasium. They all noticed the confrontation, and it only took a moment for them to comprehend what was going on. With frowns on their faces, Karasuma and Jason prepared to move. This damn school. But before they could continue, Koro-sensei laid a tentacle on their shoulders. Green circles wrapped around his face like bars, signifying him currently feeling heavily assured. None of the students trying to assassinate me. He looked at Nagisa with extreme confidence. Would ever let people like that get the better of them? Tanaka glared at the silent Nagisa as students around them watched with smiles on their faces. You dumb in more ways than one? Say something. Before Nagisa could respond, Tanaka clutched his shirt and pulled him close threateningly. Or do you want me to kill you? Nagisa's vision blurred as those words entered his ears. Kill. He pondered to himself as a familiar sensation rose inside him. Kill? Huh. Najisa stared at them with cold and calm eyes. Like you've ever tried to kill someone before, he said in a frigid tone. A chill ran down the spines of Tanaka and Takeda, and they immediately backed away while Najisa walked past them. What was that look? Asked Tanaka. It was bloodlust, Takeda answered shakily. Koro-sensei looked at Karasuma and Jason. See, my students are much more motivated. Karasuma stared at Nagisa's back, bewildered. Jason, meanwhile, frowned for a different reason. The sensation he got from Nagisa the moment he released his bloodlust was eerily similar to assassins he had met before. That kid. Jason wondered. He might have a talent for this assassination thing. I'll continue observing him when I can. But for now, I'll have to pick up Ruby and Aqua from school. Jason silently waited with closed eyes, leaning on a wall in front of the school as he waited for Ruby and Aqua. 3, 2, 1. The school bell chimed, signifying the end of school, and not long after, kids rushed out to meet their parents. Jason spotted Ruby and Aqua looking for him and turned off his stealth ability. He really needed to come up with a name for it. The instant he turned it off, Ruby and Aqua's eyes locked onto him. He wasn't a hard person to find with his distinct size, anyway. Ruby ran towards him, with Aqua trailing behind her, and he opened his arms as he crouched in preparation. It had become a routine for the past month and a half. Jason. Ruby jumped and hugged his neck. Jason chuckled and patted her head. Hello, Ruby. I trust that school was fine. Ruby leaned back with an expression of deep thought on her face. It was boring, Aqua said for her, already knowing what she was about to say. Ruby pouted and tightened her hold on Jason. Hey, no fair? I was gonna say that. Aqua ignored her and continued. I agree with her, though. It's incredibly boring. I just read my books at school if I have nothing else to do. Oh, really? You should tell your mother about that. See if she can do something about it. Of course, I'll also do what I can to help. Jason stood up with Ruby on one arm. So, you guys ready to go home? Miyako-san's probably already waiting. Ruby nodded and raised her fist. To the Jason Mobile. Jason Mobile. Jason sputtered. He was speechless for a long moment. In the end, he shook his head with a wry smile. To the Jason Mobile, it is, then. Aqua shook his head alongside him while Ruby grinned in excitement. She loved how smooth the car rides with Jason were. Thank you for picking them up, Jason-san. Miyako bowed in appreciation. Ruby and Aqua had entered the condo in order to change clothes. Jason waved his hands. It's no problem. Now, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Of course. Have a safe trip. But before he could turn around, a series of rapid thumps increasing in volume resounded deep within the condo before Ruby slid to a stop behind Miyako. You're leaving, Jason. Why so soon? Jason rubbed the back of his neck and decided to be somewhat honest. I have a new job now. Really? What do you do? Asked Miyako. He shook his head in response. Sorry. It's related to the government. Can't say much about it. Oh, that's disappointing. Well, regardless of that, take care of yourself. Miyako smiled. Ruby pouted in disappointment. But you'll be free on weekends, right? Nodding his head, Jason replied, I probably will. The side of Ruby's cheek remained inflated, but she nodded in defeat. Okay, take care, Jason. I'll see you all later. Inside his car, Jason's mind raced with ideas on how he could find more information on the science experiment that went wrong and turned the octopus into his current form. Why a science experiment? A botched science experiment was the most likely scenario based on cases from his old world, with Firestorm and the Flash being prime examples. Bruce's knowledge was extremely helpful in this case. There were some old news reports about a science facility crumbling in Tokyo and he went there to investigate. But by the time he got there, almost everything that could have given him a good lead was gone. The government went to extreme lengths to cover it up. The fact that the government even bothered to cover it up was the biggest hint so far. Even if he didn't manage to learn much from that initial investigation, it did lead to him finding a few interesting pieces of information. Looks like I'll have to infiltrate the Ministry of Defense, hack into their local database, and find any remnants of the science facility related to Koro-sensei. Not today or tomorrow, but soon. Chapter 39, Chapter 31.5, Concert, 1/2, today's the concert, isn't it? Jason mumbled to himself as he calmly dodged and parried the attacks of Bruce, Dick, and Tim with a blindfold on. A trio of batarangs cut through the air behind him. In one motion, Jason caught them and accurately hurled them back with more power, producing sparks as the batarangs clashed against Bruce's metal gauntlets. I should probably wrap this up or I'll be late. Bruce had only just begun to lower his arms from a defensive position when Jason made his decision and locked on to him. Jason's figure blurred in a burst of speed as he closed the 7 meters distance between him and Batman in half a second. Sensing impending danger, Bruce retaliated with a swift elbow strike, but Jason sensed the shift in the air and shifted his weight slightly to his right, bending his right leg into a slight crouch. The elbow passed by Jason harmlessly. And, in a feat of extraordinary flexibility, his left leg shot up straight like an uncoiled spring, hitting Bruce squarely on his chin, and his body rose into the air. 1 down. Bruce's unconscious body hit the ground, but Jason knew he wasn't out of the woods just yet. Dick and Tim flanked him from both sides, wielding their signature weapons. Dick with his eskrima sticks, and Tim with his bowstaff. Jason bobbed and weaved around their rapid strikes with slight difficulty before he found his opening. Closing his hand around the bow staff, he pulled abruptly and struck the staff's center, snapping it in half. Not expecting such a move, Tim could only use what was left of the staff to block the immediate strike from Jason. The force sent Tim sliding back and leaving 2 trails on the ground, giving Jason enough room to focus on Dick. He disarmed his stick-wielding foe with a quick 1-2 combo to the hands with his half of the bow staff, making him grunt in pain. Jason then struck with a knife hand blow to the neck, followed by a roundhouse kick to the head that launched Dick into the air. 2 down. Sensing an attack from behind, Jason leaned back until his back almost reached the ground, evading Tim's flying kick and grabbing his extended leg. Gripping tightly and using the leftover momentum from Tim's kick, Jason spun once and swung him into the ground face first, producing a loud thud. 3 down. Jason turned to the last one. She hadn't moved from her spot and only watched him throughout the whole 20 seconds. Cassandra, Bruce and the others, including me, could call ourselves living weapons, but she was the ultimate example of that among all of us. Without my vision, I won't be able to predict her moves. Unfortunately, this is the only way I can get a challenge from her. Taking a deep breath, Jason steadied himself and entered his stance. Not even a second later, Cassandra rushed at him with ferocity and ruthlessness he hadn't seen from her before. For the first few seconds, Jason dedicated his focus on getting a feel for her fighting style. He fought with extreme caution. Even one blow could kill him because each and every one of her strikes aimed for a vital spot. I got it. Going on the offensive, Jason matched Cassandra's ferocity and ruthlessness. Their movements blurred. He only needed 1 hit and after trading blows for 5 seconds, he got his golden opportunity. As he threw Cassandra over his shoulder, she spun and corrected her body in midair. But that left a momentary blind spot that he exploited, and before she landed on the ground, Jason struck with a brutal liver shot. However, like Jason and the others, Cassandra was no stranger to extreme pain. She ignored it and countered with a swift kick to the face that he ducked under. Now, placing his hands on the ground, Jason's legs quickly caught her by the neck and slammed her down into the floor head first. Cassandra's body laid limp, and Jason finally breathed a sigh of relief, taking off his blindfold. I am speechless. That was incredible, Whitley commented in disbelief. With a blindfold on as well? How? Practice and experience, Jason answered. Time to get ready for the concert. The crescent moon hung in the pitch-black sky, partially covered by clouds. At the back of the stage of Tokyo Dome, the stage staff and the technicians were busy checking the stage equipment. If one thing went wrong, management will point their fingers at them, and this show was too big to mess up. In a separate area, Bikomaki and its leading star, AI Hoshino, were also preparing their last-minute touch ups. They wore colorful, eye-catching costumes and had professional makeup artists tend to them. The makeup artist's skillful touch enhanced their beauty to another level. All right, everyone get ready and double-check everything. The show's starting in 10 minutes, the stage manager shouted. That should be it, Hoshino-san, said AI's makeup artist as she put down her brush. AI's reflection stared back at her, and she showed her signature smile. Thanks, Chika-chan, AI said with appreciation before standing up and meeting with her group. They all stood near the stage entrance and smiled in relief when AI approached. This will probably be our biggest show ever, so let's give it our best. Ready, everyone? AI asked with a bright smile. The 6 other girls nodded with equally bright smiles. Ready, they answered. AI pumped her fist and fixed her attached mic. She imagined Jason, Miyako, and her children waiting for the show to start. I'll give you a show you won't forget, everyone. Tens of thousands of people gathered inside the Tokyo Dome. Most of them were men wearing Bikomaki merchandise and glowing sticks. Near the stage and at the very front of the audience, Jason and Miyako, along with the kids, waited with great anticipation. This is awesome, said Ruby as she sat on Jason's shoulders, giving her the best view possible. I almost can't believe that Mama gets to perform at Tokyo Dome. Please start already. I can't wait any longer. Even Aqua couldn't hide his excitement. His eyes shone with elation as he stood, waiting for the show to start. Miyako smiled along with them. It was hers and her husband's dream coming to fruition, and she couldn't describe the happiness she felt knowing that it was coming true. All the hard work and struggles they faced culminated in this one moment. Well, you won't have to wait longer because it's about to start, Jason said, being able to hear all the way backstage. Just as Jason finished his words, the lights on the stage darkened. A moment later, the music started and the light shows began. Posing, AI stood at the center with her 6 group mates beside her. Anita no idol. Signed WAB. Chu. As AI winked at them knowingly, Ruby and Aqua, in sync with the music, cheered like it was their last. Yeah. Jason, meanwhile, found himself captivated by AI. He finally understood why many were saying she was currently the #1 idol. AI's stage presence, her smile, her singing, and her pure expressiveness were unbelievable. It was almost unreal. Jason struggled to take his eyes off her, like a star he couldn't bear to turn away from. Yuyaku ita eni. Yurshii eni. Makadushikut ashi wo batabata shinagara. Suddenly, his eyes widened as a realization struck him, and he smiled wryly. I guess this is what being starstruck feels like, huh? Giving into the atmosphere around him, Jason joined in the cheering. Chapter 40, Chapter 31.5, Concert, 2 halves. You were great, Mama. I couldn't stop cheering the entire time. Ruby said elatedly as she hugged AI. Inside AI's condo, they all gathered around the table, filled with delicious food and 2 bottles of alcohol for the adults. AI's concert had ended, and after the after-concert events, they all went home to celebrate. AI giggled and returned Ruby's hug. Mama appreciates your support, Ruby. What about you, Aqua? Did you like my performance? She looked beside her. Aqua nodded with bright eyes while chewing his food and drank a cup of water before answering. The performance was amazing. I still can't believe an idol group from our company got to perform at a stadium. Ichigo shouted with a shot glass in hand. His face flushed red and his speech slurred slightly. The man had consumed half a dozen shots of the strong alcohol they brought the moment he got his chance. Our dreams finally come true, Miyako? Hell yeah. Beside him, Miyako also had a flushed face. In her hand was a shot of alcohol that she downed in one go. Woo, she cheered and raised her empty shot glass. Chuckling, Jason drank his 8th shot and refilled their glasses. The alcohol had a 35% alcohol percentage, but he didn't feel a thing. Not even a buzz. This really takes the fun out of drinking alcohol, he thought with only a small amount of disappointment. He was never really much of a drinker, anyway. He noticed AI yawning and turned to her. You should go sleep if you're tired. Don't worry about the dishes and these two. He gestured towards Ichigo and Miyako with his head. I'll take care of them. AI shook her head and gave him a bright smile. I'm okay, just a bit tired, that's all. Jason slightly frowned in worry. He could tell she was lying, but it wasn't as if he could force her to rest. All right, if you say so. Mama, give me pats, said Ruby. Okay, Yosh, Yosh. AI pat her head gently and Ruby snuggled closer. This is awesome. I can't wait for the next oof. Ichigo fell onto the floor, face flat, and struggled to stand properly. Miyako giggled. You're so clumsy. Here, I'll help oof. Their rather pathetic states made Jason sigh and put down his drink. Come on, you two. You've drunk enough for today. Jason easily picked them up as if they were sacks of potatoes and walked towards the door. You two can sleep on my couch or bed. I don't mind. Jason san to the rescue. Ichigo cheered and pretended as if he was a superhero flying in the air. We. Giggling, Miyako joined in. I'll be back, guys. Don't wait for me and continue eating, said Jason. AI and her kids nodded in a daze. Jason's really strong, isn't he? He picked them up like they weighed nothing, said Aqua. Ruby scratched her cheek. Well, he works out a lot, right? Hey, why don't we work out in the future as well? AI imagined such a scenario and the image of extremely buff versions of Ruby and Aqua popped up in her mind. Horrified, she shook her head and lightly chopped their heads. Nope. I forbid you two from looking like mounds of muscle. Now, come on, let's continue eating. We'll go watch a movie after this. Jason rubbed the bridge of his nose and sighed as entered AI's condo. It took a long while to settle Ichigo and Miyako down, but he eventually got annoyed and just knocked them out with a light tap on the back of their necks. Welcome back, Jason. AI greeted him with a tired smile. Wanna come join us? Jason looked up at the TV while mentally noting her fatigue. You're watching a movie, huh? I'll join you guys after I finish washing the dishes. Okay. The faucet turned off with a squeak, and Jason dried his hands off using a towel. Walking towards AI and the kids, he wasn't surprised to find them sleeping while leaning on each other. It was a few hours past midnight and the entire night had been a tiring affair. They look adorable, he noted with a slight smile before shaking his head and gently picking them up one by one. He slowly laid them down on their bed. AI was in the center with Ruby and Aqua sandwiching her. They are definitely adorable. Jason exhaled through his nose in amusement. Jin, he mentally summoned, and Jin emerged from his shadow in his bird form. Jin was quickly becoming accustomed to their nightly routine. You ready for another night of patrolling? Jason asked as Jin silently flapped his wings and landed on his shoulder. Jin lightly pecked his cheek before nodding, and Jason grinned. Jin had an arsenal of useful abilities, and this one was one of his favorites. You know what to do. The shadows below him turned pitch black, and they sunk into it, leaving no trace of their presence. Among the sea of stars in the night sky, a lone star shined brighter than any other. Suddenly, the star dimmed and 2 smaller stars occupied the space beside it. AI, Ruby, and Aqua all slept soundly that night while Tokyo's resident vigilante continued hunting monsters hiding in human skin, further fanning the flames of the city's new urban legend. The Vengeful Ghost. A spirit that takes those who have done severe atrocities to the underworld. One by one, people who have committed severe crimes known or unknown to the larger world disappeared from society left and right. Those who were already aware of this unknown phenomenon had hidden themselves in the light, afraid of what was lurking in the shadows. Unfortunately for them, their efforts were in vain. They weren't dealing with a simple vigilante. They were facing the Red Hood. Chapter 41, Chapter 32, Shiro. The office door slid open with a loud thud. Will Sensei? Bitch Sensei. Jason and Irina looked up from their desks, pausing the work they were doing. The student who opened it was Meg Kataka, a female student with long, light brown hair. What is it, Kataka-san? Asked Jason, feigning ignorance. He had an idea as to why they were being called outside. Yesterday, Koro-sensei had a confrontation with the school's principal. An impressive man, even by Jason's standards. Jason's information gathering and spying before being hired involved the top brass of the assassination classroom operation, including the school principal. The man was someone who used brainwashing techniques and manipulation in order to enhance the performance of his school's students and to fulfill his other agendas. Yesterday, he and Koro-sensei had a clash of sorts in regards to their teaching methods and the treatment of the E-class. This, combined with the class' lack of determination in schooling, set Koro-sensei on a course to correct their attitude. Come outside, quick, Kataka urged. Jason and Irina looked at each other before standing up and following Kataka outside at a slow pace. Hurry up. What do you mean, hurry up? Irina asked in an annoyed tone as they reached the area overlooking the field outside. Koro-sensei asked us to bring you, she answered before going down the stairs and joining her classmates. Aside from them, the teachers, the whole class was gathered at the bottom of the stairs. Koro-sensei seemed busy pushing one of the small exercise equipment to the side of the large, grass-filled field. Irina-sensei and Will-sensei, there's something I'd like to ask you two as professional assassins, Koro-sensei said seriously. Irina scanned the situation and blinked in confusion. What is all this? Koro-sensei ignored her question and continued, when you're on a job, do you prepare just one plan of attack? Irina hummed in curiosity before a serious expression took over her face. No, things rarely play out according to my initial plan. Making detailed backup plans in preparation for any possibility is a basic tenet for any assassination. Jason nodded to her answer. Information is integral in that process. An assassination with little to no gathered information is bound to fail. And like Irina said, preparation is the key to success in any mission, especially for a professional assassin. I've learned through experience that circumstances can change in an instant, and adaptability is what separates the successful from the failed. Multiple plans, each tailored to exploit different variables, ensure that no matter what obstacles arise, I'm ready to make the necessary adjustments to achieve my objective. Flexibility, resourcefulness, and the ability to seize opportunities are what make a deadly assassin truly formidable. And you, Karasuma-sensei, Koro-sensei continued as he walked towards the center of the field. When fighting with a knife, is the first strike the only important one? The first strike is, of course, the most important, but your next move matters too. Against a powerful foe, your first blow is likely to be dodged, so the precision with which you can land your second and third blows can decide the fight, answered Karasuma. Hearing all this, the majority of the class merely had looks of confusion on their faces. Look, what are you getting at? Mahara asked Koro-sensei. As your teachers have said, Koro-sensei spun in place, producing a small cloud of dust around him, and was noticeably speeding up. A confident assassin always has a backup plan they can rely on. But what about you? We've got assassination, and that's enough, you think, and there goes your academic goals. Koro-sensei produced the sound of a helicopter's rotor as he spun, his figure blurring into multiple, still after images like a spinning fan. You're just trying to avoid dealing with your inferiority complexes. The students screamed and everyone covered their faces with their arms and pushed their legs against the ground as the strong gust of wind transformed into a storm with Koro-sensei at the center. Jason frowned at the artificial phenomenon Koro-sensei was beginning to make. Beside him, Irina and Karasuma stood their ground against the wind. What the hell is he doing? Is he trying to create a tornado? What if I fled from this classroom? What if another killer got to me first? Asked Koro-sensei. If you stake everything on this assassination and it goes up in smoke, all you've got left is good old E-class inferiority. A word of advice from me to you as you walk that fine line. Those who can't wield a second blade aren't qualified to be assassins. A small tornado had formed in the middle of the field, reaching the sky and covering their field of vision. Trees in the vicinity tilted, their roots barely hanging on, and the tornado sucked in large pieces of the ground. In the sky, ominous clouds swirled around the tornado, and people around the mountain gasped in horror. From the main campus, the principal, Gakaho Asano, smirked as he watched the tornado. Show off. Soon, the tornado died off and the sun's bright rays illuminated the field. Jason put down his arms and slight awe overcame him. Despite the enormous cloud of dust covering the area, he could still see what had changed. Holy shit. I'll have to revise my contingency plans after this. The dust cleared, and the students gasped. Koro-sensei had completely flattened the field and removed any grass or debris. It even had white track and field lines encircling it, along with goalposts at each side. The yard was uneven and rampant with weeds. I tidied it up. Koro-sensei's voice resounded around the newly renovated field. His eyes glowed ominously. I am a super being capable of wiping out the earth. Flattening a whole neighborhood is a piece of cake. If you can't show me a second blade you can depend upon, I'll know that none of you are assassins worthy of taking me on, and I'll flatten this entire campus before I go. Jason could tell that while it wasn't an empty threat, he wasn't completely serious about it. It would also go against the psychological profile he's built about Koro-sensei. Show you a second blade? By when? Asked Nagisa with worry in his voice. Tomorrow, of course. The students made sounds of confusion while Koro-sensei raised a tentacle. He clarified, I want you all to place the top 50 on tomorrow's midterms. The skin on his forehead changed color, forming the number 50. The kids shouted in surprise, with the ones who usually place last in the class holding their heads in shock. Koro-sensei raised his tentacles with confidence. I've been honing your second blades all this time. You've learned fast enough to keep up with the main campus students and then some. He pointed at them with encouragement. Succeed in your mission and hold your heads high, smiling and unashamed. You are proud assassins, and moreover, proud members of E-class. With that declaration hanging in the air, nervousness gripped the students. They didn't want to disappoint Koro-sensei, but at the same time, they weren't confident in being able to get into the top 50. Jason could tell unease and a lack of self-confidence dominated most of the students except for Karma. He wasn't optimistic about their chances of fulfilling the octopus conditions either. Most of their current grades weren't bad, but it was from being worthy of getting into the top 50 among the 186 students. The one most likely to reach that threshold was Karma. Furthermore, there was the principal. Jason had a complete profile on him. Based on what he'd seen so far, the man was extremely likely to add some twists to the tests, such as adding new material, in order to fulfill his desire of keeping the E-class as an example for the other students. At this point in time, it was too late to help the class study more material. There was nothing else they could do as teachers but hope that they can do well in the midterms. I did my best teaching them, Jason consoled himself. While he wasn't that close to the students, he wanted the best for them just as much as the octopus. His life as a street rat in Gotham City taught him many valuable, but life-threatening lessons, and he wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But he'd be damned if he ever let any of these kids experience something like that just because he couldn't teach them one subject right. The day after the midterms, the class got their scores, and it was just as Jason expected. Inside the teacher's office, Koro-sensei stood facing the wall with his head down. Irina calmly looked ahead with her head in her folded hands, but he could tell the test results agitated her as well. Karasuma was looking at the blue sky, his hand holding his phone to his ear. What's the meaning of this? I felt that test was decidedly unfair, Karasuma said to the main campus teacher on the phone. That's strange. You should have been notified, the teacher replied in an infuriatingly fake, apologetic tone. The man was audibly holding back his laughter and was no doubt smiling on the other end. Was there some kind of miscommunication on your end, perhaps? You don't stop by the main campus very often, so it wouldn't surprise me. I can't say there was, and regardless, this is highly unusual, Karasuma replied, slightly aggravated. 2 days before the exams, and you broaden the scope across all subjects. You don't seem to understand. What was it, Karasuma-sensei? The man replied condescendingly. We are a prep school. The last-minute cramming abilities of our students is simply another thing we test. Why, the main campus students received a splendid lecture on the new material from the principal himself. Karasuma's brows furrowed, and he ended the call while Jason clenched his fist. Jason looked at Karasuma's back. Karasuma's no doubt worried about the octopus leaving because of this, but I highly doubt he'd leave just like that. He turned his head to Koro-sensei, who was still facing the wall, as if he himself was the one who failed to get into the top 50. The octopus is just too invested in the E-class academics, and it would be out of character for him to abandon them. Koro-sensei's tentacles made squishing noises as he silently made his way to the students. Jason and the other teachers looked at each other before following him. While Koro-sensei entered the classroom of despondent students and faced the board, Jason and the other teachers waited outside and observed. The responsibility is entirely mine. I seem to have underestimated what this school is capable of. I can't even face you after this. Silence reigned once again. Suddenly, Koro-sensei sensed an attack from behind and sidestepped to his right in fright, dodging an anti-sensei knife to the head. He stared at the knife on the ground in surprise. An assassination wasn't appropriate in this serious situation. You sure? Grinning, Karma asked as he stepped forward, carrying a bundle of papers. If you can't face us, you can't see us coming to kill you. Koro-sensei's head turned red, and he raised a tentacle in anger. Karma-kun? I'm very depressed right now, and... Koro-sensei stopped in curiosity as Karma laid out the papers on the table. A strange sound escaped his throat as he stared at Karma's almost perfect scores. Koro-sensei picked up the pieces of paper close and looked at them intently. Changing a few questions isn't gonna stop me, Karma confidently said. The whole class stood up and gathered around him, in awe of his scores. Whoa, 100 in math? No way. Karma smiled as he looked up at Koro-sensei, remembering the intense after-image tutoring sessions. My grades were good already, but you really went the extra mile. That's why I could handle the questions even after they changed the scope. However, I'm staying right here. Assassination is way more fun than going back to my old class. So what's the plan? You gonna use the others' results as an excuse to turn tail and run? He got up close to Koro-sensei while holding an anti-sensei knife and taunted, sounds like you're just scared we might kill you. Koro-sensei let out a small, but audible groan of annoyance. The students noticed the shift in the atmosphere, smiling. Kataika elbowed Mahara, signaling him to join Karma's taunting. Mahara held his hands behind his head. Oh, so that's it? You were scared. You should have just told us up front. Just be like, I'm scared. I wanna run home to my big octopus mommy. Koro-sensei ground his teeth in annoyance. Not long after, his entire body turned red, and he exploded in anger. His tentacles wriggled in the air. I am not running away. Oh, then what? Asked Karma. Koro-sensei paused before his face took on a competitive edge and he held a tentacle tip in front of his face. We'll pay them back twofold on the end of term exams. The students erupted in laughter because they found his words absurd, but also mostly because of how unsure Koro-sensei also looked. This is no laughing matter? Honestly, aren't you thoroughly disappointed? Koro-sensei nervously shouted. Outside, Jason smiled in relief. Besides him, Karasuma and Irina's tension also disappeared. Looks like everything turned out alright. Koro-sensei's dynamic with his class was great, and Jason had no doubt that if they kept improving, they'd definitely sweep the top spots from the main campus students. Smiling fondly, thought back to the kids at home and had an idea. What if I tutor them when they're older? Ruby wants to become an idol like AI while Aqua wants to become an actor. But they can't rely on those plans their whole life and will need something to fall back on. A second blade if you will. I don't think they'll decline if I ask them. Ruby will probably jump in joy, and Aqua's likely to join her just because he wants to. Holding a large bag filled with homemade food and drinks, including dessert, Jason rang the doorbell of AI's condo and waited. It wasn't long before the door opened. AI greeted him with a warm smile. Good evening, Jason. Good evening, AI. Jason returned the smile and raised the bag in his hand. I brought some food and drinks for movie night. AI clapped her hands excitedly. Wonderful. Ruby and Aqua were so excited about tonight's anime and they wanted to watch it while eating your food. Well, they won't have to wait any longer. May I come in? Asked Jason. Her face flushed red out of embarrassment. I've held you up, haven't I? I'm so sorry. Of course you can come in. Jason shook his head as he took off his shoes and entered. No worries at all. Pardon the intrusion. After the night of the concert at Tokyo Dome, AI and the kids started inviting him to their movie nights. They had movie nights at least twice a week and almost always with everyone together. Jason's role as the better cook between him and AI was to be the designated cook every movie night. He had already expected it even before they suggested the idea. As soon as Jason neared the couches, Ruby pounced from the couch and jumped towards him with her arms wide open. Jason. Jason calmly caught her with his free hand and gave her a reprimanding look. How many times have I told you not to do that, young miss? Ruby's smile froze, and she scratched her cheek. 8 times, right. Hearing her reply, Jason sighed. Ruby never stopped doing this, and he didn't think she was gonna stop soon. Behind them, AI giggled at their playful dynamic before going ahead and preparing the anime they were going to watch. He raised the bag in his other hand up to Ruby. Look what I brought. Her eyes immediately lit up, and she tried grabbing the bag. Jason pulled it away from her and gave her a playful raise of an eyebrow. Gimme, gimme. Ruby kept trying to grab the bag while standing on his arm, knowing he wouldn't drop her. Jason was about to shake his head before an idea came to him. Ruby, he said forcefully, catching her attention. Let's make a deal. I'll hand you the bag, and in return, you have to stop jumping from the couch for the next 2 movie nights. Deal. Okay, deal. Ruby Pinky promised him and immediately grabbed the bag before jumping back onto the couch. It cushioned her and the bag's falls before she began unloading all the food and drinks on the middle table. This girl. Jason groaned internally. Jason turned to Aqua, who had just been reading a rather advanced book for his age on a separate couch. He'd accepted long ago that Aqua was smarter than most kids around his age and even those older than him. The kid was a prodigy. You doing fine, Aqua? Aqua turned to him and nodded before flipping to the next page. I'm doing fine, Jason. I'm sorry about my sister. You know how rowdy she can be sometimes. Understatement of the year. Jason nodded in complete agreement. Yosh. AI grabbed his arm and pulled him down to the couch. Don't just stand there, Jason. It's time to watch the anime. Okay, my bad. Jason complied and grabbed 2 chicken sandwiches. He passed one to AI with practiced motions. I wanna sit on Mama's lap. Ruby climbed onto the couch and placed herself on AI's lap, smiling victoriously at Aqua, and he glared at her in return. Seeing their interaction, Jason snorted in amusement. It was pretty much a normal interaction between them, and it wasn't even the worst one. AI pressed play, and the intro for the anime started. I forgot to ask them about what they think of being tutored by me, Jason thought before he shrugged. I'll ask next time. Throughout the whole night, they successfully finished a whole 24-episode season of anime. 2 weeks quickly passed by, and a lot of things happened. First, during their brief stay at Kyoto for their school trip, the students attempted to assassinate the octopus by distracting him with the city's attractions and having a sniper hired by the government called Red Eye perform the assassinations. Needless to say, they failed, and the assassin gave up after a whole day of trying. There was also an altercation with another school's students where 2 of Nejisa's female group mates got kidnapped. Koro-sensei and Nejisa's group took care of the situation, but when Jason heard about what happened, he silently vanished and did his own thing. The delinquent students were all sent to the hospital the next day due to mysterious circumstances. But unbeknownst to them, an anonymous source gave the police evidence of their crimes. Rape and blackmailing only being 2 of a long list. It became an enormous scandal and the reputation of the school the delinquents belonged to hit rock bottom. After that, the class got a new transfer student in the form of autonomously intelligent fixed artillery San or Ritsu, as the class named her. She or it was an AI program contained inside a metal box with an avatar display of a pink-haired girl with a cheery and optimistic attitude. She was the complete opposite of optimistic on her first day, but Koro-sensei reprogrammed her and despite her creators reverting most of Koro-sensei's modifications, she hid the core changes. There were also some problems before her reprogramming, such as disrupting the class, often with a hail of bullets aimed at Koro-sensei. But they were all solved in the end, and the class now had an impressive AI assisting them in their assassinations. Then there was the arrival of Irina's mentor, Lovro. While Jason wasn't able to meet the man because of a minor school emergency he needed to help Ruby and Aqua with, he remotely hacked into his phone and acquired footage of what happened during the day using the hidden cameras he hid all over the school. The information he got from Lovero's phone might prove useful in the future. Raindrops lightly pelted the classroom's window. Jason felt anticipation bubbling up inside him. Ever since Ritsu first transferred, he'd been monitoring the messages between the Ministry and Karasuma, and according to them, their long-awaited trump card would be arriving today. Jason stood beside Karasuma and Irina as they observed the supposed trump card's guardian, a man donning full white robes, including a white mask that completely covered his head. They stayed outside the classroom as the man, who introduced himself as Shiro, stepped inside. Jason immediately noticed the strange frequency of his voice with his enhanced hearing and deduced him to be using a voice modifier. The sound of shifting metal parts also emanated from beneath Shiro's robes, suggesting he had hidden weapons beneath his robes. "And nice to meet you, Shiro-san," greeted Koro-sensei. The stories Ritsu told of the coming assassin slightly unnerved him, since she said that even a deadly AI like her was vastly inferior to him. "And where is our new student?" Shiro brought out a brick-shaped jelly from his robes and replied, "It's a pleasure, Koro-sensei. He's a rather unique child, in personality and otherwise. I'll introduce him myself." While moving to the front of the class, Shiro paused and Jason noticed him staring at Kaede Kayano. Jason narrowed his eyes in thought. He's surprised, but he recognizes her. That's strange. Jason came to know of Kaede's history and fake identity through his previous investigations. Her real name was Akari Yukimura, a brown-haired, retired child actress and the sister of E-class previous teacher, Agiri Yukimura. He always knew she was hiding something inside her because his senses registered her as something a threat similar to the octopus, but he couldn't figure out the reason. What was most interesting about her was her connection to her sister. While her sister was a teacher at this school during the day, she worked at a research facility at night. That was the extent of the information he could find. There was no information about what they researched, and the only clue he possessed was that the facility's explosion could be related to the major destruction of the moon. The fact that both events happened on the same night and the octopus emerged sometime after was undeniable and was most likely related. Jason had been looking for further connections and Shiro apparently recognized Kaede. This was his perfect opportunity. He knowingly turned his eyes to the back of the classroom. "Yes?" Koro-sensei inquired, noticing Shiro looking at his students. "Oh, just. You've got good kids here. I'm sure he'll fit right in," said Shiro. Now to introduce him. He turned towards the door and the class followed him with nervous looks. "Hey, Itona. Come on in." The students screamed. Something suddenly crashed into the back wall of the room, sending debris flying along with a cloud of dust. From the hole in the wall, Itona's figure emerged, donned in the school's uniform with the addition of a white fur scarf around his neck. With an unchanging expression, he nonchalantly walked forward and sat in the furthest seat at the back next to Karma. "I won," he said, and Jason immediately noted the boy's lack of water on his body, his hidden bloodlust, and his wide-eyed look of mania. "I proved that I'm stronger than that classroom wall." "Use the damn door," the class shouted back. "That's all that matters." "That's all," Itona mumbled to himself while ignoring them, his hands held together on the desk. "We've got ourselves another handful," thought the class in dismay, remembering Ritsu's disruptions during lessons. "This is Horib Itona." "Please call him Itona," said Shiro. "Say, Itona-kun, something's been bugging me," said Karma. "You came in from outside, right? Empty-handed? It's raining buckets out there, and yet there's not a drop of it on you." In response, Itona surveyed the class. His chair groaned as he stood up before walking to Karma. "You're probably the strongest one in this class." He laid his hand on Karma's head and looked him in the eye, his voice taking on a strange tone of comfort. "But don't fret. I have no interest in killing those weaker than me. The only ones I do want to kill." He walked towards Koro-sensei, who was happily eating the block of jelly Shiro gave him, "are those who could be stronger than me. And in this room, Koro-sensei." He pointed at Koro-sensei. "That's you?" Koro-sensei grinned at him. "When you say strong and weak, do you refer to fighting ability, Itona-kun? In terms of strength, you and I are worlds apart. We're closer than you think." Itona took out the same block of jelly from his pocket and came closer. "After all, we're brothers by blood." The class jaws dropped in shock while Jason deadpanned. It was complete bullshit and there was no possibility of that ever coming true. Itona took a bite out of his jelly, wrapping included. "The loser dies, brother." He walked outside with Shiro behind him and held the door. "Siblings have no need for cheap tricks. I will kill you and prove my strength. We face off after school. Here, in this classroom." As the class erupted into chaos due to the reveal of Koro-sensei's familial ties, Jason and the teachers headed back to the office. Classes would proceed as normal, though there was obvious tension in the classroom's atmosphere as Koro-sensei taught. Inside the teacher's office, Jason continued his work while subtly observing Shiro. The man entertained himself with some manga lying around. Reading his body language showed Shiro was the most agitated person here. He seemed carefree as he read and laughed at the manga he was reading, but his body language presented otherwise. Shiro noticed Karasuma's nervousness and put down his manga. "Sorry to startle you, Karasuma-sensei. That boy's existence is the most classified of classified information. It wasn't unreasonable for you to be in the dark here, but I assure you, he is indeed Koro-sensei's brother." And after school, that will become extremely evident. He seems to be implying something else there, Jason thought, and his mind suddenly connected it all together. If Koro-sensei and Itona resulted from the same experiment that gave Koro-sensei his abilities, then that could be why he calls them brothers. That explains the similar feeling Itona gave off and his dry state. If his tentacles are the same as Koro-sensei's, they should be capable of moving at similar speeds. He must be hiding tentacles of some sort somewhere inside his body. But this... Does this mean Kaed Kaino also has these tentacles? If that's the case, how did she acquire them? Jason's computer-like mind raced with the most probable reasons and the various possibilities. I'll figure out more after school ends. I'll get to see what Shiro and Itona have in store for us. Everyone in the building had already gathered inside the room before the school bell rang. The tables were all placed like walls on each side of the room, giving ample space for Koro-sensei and Itona in the middle. Itona threw his uniform jacket and scarf away, revealing a lean, toned body under his red, sleeveless turtleneck. They arranged their desks into a ring, asked Irina. Jason and Karasuma nodded. Yep. Like a real match. I've never heard of anyone going about an assassination like this, said Karasuma. Me neither. As Itona stared at Koro-sensei with the same wide-eyed look, Shiro spoke. You must be tired of plain old assassinations, Koro-sensei. Shall we set a rule, then? How about? Stepping out of the room means instant death. What do you think? The hell? As if the loser would ever keep their end of the bargain, said Sujino, referring to Koro-sensei. No, replied Karma, for him to break a rule we all witnessed would damage our trust in him as a teacher. That kind of restriction works especially well with this guy. All right, answered Koro-sensei. I accept your rule. However, Itona-kun, hurting the spectators will also result in a loss. Very well. Start on my signal, said Shiro before he raised his gloved hand and chopped down. Assassination, begin. A set of light blue-colored tentacles suddenly emerged from Itona's head. Almost invisible to the normal human's naked eye due to their speed, the tentacles struck Koro-sensei's left tentacle, cleanly cutting it off. Everyone's eyes were pinned to Itona's tentacles. Koro-sensei stared at the tentacles in shock. It can't be. Tentacles. So I was right, thought Jason, before furrowing his brows at Koro-sensei's reaction. His bloodlust is terrifying. Where did you get those tentacles? Koro-sensei growled menacingly, his bloodlust stifling the surrounding air. As Koro-sensei's skin turned black, the veins on his head bulged, his teeth ground together, and his eyes glowed a menacing red. We're not obligated to tell you that, Koro-sensei, answered Shiro. But this ought to have convinced you. You have different parents and different upbringings, but you are nonetheless brothers. Koro-sensei's face remained black. My, what a scary face you're making, said Shiro. Did you perhaps remember something unpleasant? There it is again, Jason thought. He seems to know the octopus on a more personal level. Such a specific set of words, likely aimed to attack him psychologically. Oya, Koro-sensei said as he regenerated his tentacle. It would appear that you and I will need to have a little talk. Unfortunately, you'll be dead by then. Shiro raised his left arm, revealing a metal device in his sleeve. It released a flash of violet light. Koro-sensei's skin suddenly turned gray and gained the texture of concrete. Exposure to this pressure ray at close range triggers dilatant behavior in your cells, said Shiro. Itona took the opportunity and attacked, his tentacles turning into blurs. Koro-sensei shouted in pain, having been seemingly hit by Itona's tentacles. Your whole body stiffens instantly, Shiro said confidently as he pointed his thumb down. We know everything. All of your weak points. The dust cleared, revealing the husk of Koro-sensei's skin on the ground. Koro-sensei hung onto a hanging ceiling light, breathing and sweating heavily. You've shed your skin? That's right. You did have that trick up your sleeve. However, Koro-sensei, we also know the downside to that process. Itona attacked once again and Koro-sensei flew down and evaded his strikes, though his speed had noticeably decreased. Molting expends more energy than one would expect. Consequently, the speed you're so proud of drops immediately afterward. And you've grown back the arm that Itona took in his first surprise attack. That uses up quite a bit of stamina as well. By my calculations, you should be evenly matched physically around now. Moreover, the use of tentacles depends greatly on one's mental state. And when one considers the shock of being injured by an unexpected tentacle, it's obvious who's in the lead now. Furthermore, he has the support of his devoted guardian. Shiro raised the device on his left arm once again, emitting a flash of light that stiffened Koro-sensei. Itona jumped into the air and crashed down with a spin while surrounding himself with his tentacles. 2 pieces of Koro-sensei's leg tentacles flew into the air and Itona spun back. Koro-sensei grunted before kneeling on the ground in pain. His breaths came in pants and mucus-like sweat poured down his body. Shiro laughed delightfully. Now you'll have to grow back your legs too. That'll drop your stamina even further, making you easier to kill. What a relief, said Itona as he looked down at Koro-sensei's pitiful form. Turns out I'm stronger than you, brother. While Koro-sensei and Itona circled each other, Jason spotted Nagisa taking out his anti-sensei knife, and a smile appeared on his face. This battle's over. They probably didn't calculate what's going to happen next. Koro-sensei regenerated his legs and finally regained his breath. This is the second time anyone's pressed me this hard. At first glance, it seemed like a straightforward face-off, but it's all been so carefully calculated. There's a lot I'd like to ask you too, but I won't get a chance unless I win this first. You still think you can win? Shiro asked dismissively. The bluster of a cornered octopus, no more. As Koro-sensei pointed a tentacle at Shiro, he positioned himself close to Nagisa. There is one thing you forgot to take into account, Shiro-san. There is not, rejected Shiro. My methods are impeccable. Jason could only describe the next sequence of events as spectacular. As Aitona struck with his tentacles again, Koro-sensei took Nagisa's knife in a sudden burst of speed while using a piece of tissue. Using that, he positioned the knife where the tentacles struck the ground. This caught Aitona off guard, allowing Koro-sensei to wrap him in his molted skin and throw him out the window. You should be unharmed, wrapped in my old skin like that, said Koro-sensei. But your feet are outside the ring. Green lines circled Koro-sensei's head, and his annoying grin appeared on his face. I win. As per the rules, that means you die. You can't kill me anymore. Aitona's face distorted in rage. Jason noticed this and prepared to subdue him. Koro-sensei, seemingly oblivious to Aitona's change in expression or completely confident in his advantage, continued in a lecturing tone. If you want to live, stay with the other students of this class, and learn something that can't be measured just by crunching numbers, the difference experience makes. I've lived a little longer than you, and come to learn a little more. I became a teacher because I wanted to pass that on to you all. He tapped his head. If you don't take my experience from me here in this classroom, you'll never be able to beat me. Aitona's eyes shut and the blood vessels around his eyes bulged. I won't. I'm weak. His eyes snapped open. The sclera had turned black with tints of red and his iris constricted. Shiro twitched, and his right arm shifted. This isn't good. Aitona absolutely despises studying. And lecturing a child who hates to study. Aitona's tentacles turned black and whipped the air chaotically. Could result in genocide. I'm strong. These tentacles made me stronger than all the rest, muttered Aitona. All the rest. Aitona landed on the broken window and leapt towards Koro-sensei. Just as Jason was about to move in, Shiro lifted his right sleeve and shot a dart at Aitona. Aitona's body immediately slacked, and he fell onto the ground, unconscious. Shiro put down the smoking metal barrel and approached Aitona. I'm sorry, Koro-sensei. It seems this boy wasn't yet mentally prepared for school. I know it's his first day and all, but he'll be taking a little break. Shiro picked him up and carried him on his shoulder. Wait, shouted Koro-sensei. I can't just let that student go. I'm his teacher. I shall look after him until he graduates. And Shiro-san, I have so very much to ask you. Sorry, but no. We're leaving. He paused beside Koro-sensei. Or would you stop us by force? Koro-sensei turned and attempted to grab Shiro's shoulder, but the moment he made contact with Shiro's robe, his tentacles popped. Anti-teacher fibers. You literally cannot touch me. Don't worry. He'll be back before long. After all, March is just around the corner. I'll take on the task of tutoring him at home. The world drastically slowed down from Jason's view while Shiro exited the room. He activated his presence concealment before placing a near-undetectable tracking device on him and Aitona, all within a fraction of a second. An instant later, everything returned to normal, and Shiro was none the wiser. Not even Koro-sensei seemed to notice what happened. He remained silent, staring at the exit Shiro went through. Jason smirked. You need to fix that habit of doing a monologue like a villain, Shiro. You keep giving away free information. He already had better ways to immobilize Koro-sensei if he needed to, but the way Shiro talked to Koro-sensei gave him more data to use for Shiro's psychological profile. Returning his face to normal, Jason approached Karasuma. Karasuma, I'll be taking a few days off. I don't know when I'll be back. Karasuma hummed before answering. That's fine. But may I know the reason? Personal business, Jason replied. His eyes narrowed slightly. I simply asked out of curiosity. There's no need to glare at me, said Karasuma. He looked away before busying himself by calling for repairs. Satisfied, Jason cracked his neck, producing audible pops, before helping the students. The classroom was a mess.